What if Naruto? Hello everyone, welcome back to What If Naruto Was More Like His Father Part 7. Anyways, enjoy. 3 days back, Sunagakure. Baki looked over with increasing annoyance as the meeting of Sunagakure's advisory council went on. His growing frustration was mainly due to the tactless arguments, more like shouting, weren't arriving on any conclusive course of action. He tuned them out, instead choosing to focus on Temari's report of her brother's defeat. It was a shock of great magnitude to him when he had heard that Gaara had been soundly defeated. He shook his head mentally. Just great. We have a situation that requires us to act as quickly and decisively as we can, and these fools can't seem to agree on anything at all. It was quite fortunate that the Sand had managed to work out a ceasefire with a leaf, but Baki knew that it was temporary at best. Konoha would not hesitate to retaliate if any of Suna's shinobi so much as scowled at them. Tensions were high, and Suna needed something to convince Konoha of their sincerity in drawing up a new alliance treaty. Baki cringed as he thought about the reports from the teams stationed at the Wind-Earth borders. More than average number of IWA shinobi had been showing up. While not up to anything, Baki would bet anything that IWA was testing their borders, looking for any weaknesses. In the worst-case scenario, IWA would conquer Suna, which meant that they would practically be neighbors with Konoha. Given the history between those two countries, it could signal the start of the Fourth Great Shinobi War. With a sigh, he took a sip of his steaming tea to calm himself down a bit while still trying to think up of a way to regain Suna's military alliance with Konoha. Absently, he mentally recounted just how they lost. They invaded Konoha, Konoha forces were ready, Orochimaru attacked the Sandaime Hokage, Temari and Kankuro took Gaara into the forests, followed by the Uchiha, Gaara went crazy, unleashed Shikaku, stopped by a giant. The epiphany hit him with such force that he almost spat out the tea he was drinking. Almost scrambling for Temari's report, he flipped pages until he found what he was looking for. Gaara was cleanly and efficiently defeated by Uzumaki, or is it Namake's? Naruto. There was the answer and the epiphany he was looking for. Namake's Naruto. Son of the legendary Yandaime Hokage. A child of the Hokage, savior of the leaf. Pieces of a plan rapidly came together in a mind, forming a picture that was not the best solution, but perhaps the only solution they had at the moment. He stood up, clearing his throat to gather everyone's attention. Honorable members of the council, some new facts have come to my attention, and I believe I have found a solution to our current problem. He had the undivided attention of some of the most politically powerful people in Suna. He could not afford to go back now, nor could he afford to make a single miscalculation. As you may all know, IWA is currently testing out our borders. Our only solution to this problem is to somehow regain our alliance with Konoha. This is the only way we can buy enough time to recover from the loss of our forces. This is where our problem currently stands. How do we prove we won't betray Konoha again? A twinge of satisfaction rose up inside Baki as he saw the winces from several of the council members, reminding them that they had indeed betrayed Konoha, falling into Orochimaru's manipulations. Mutters were rising as the members considered his point. Baki took a deep breath and relaxed. The next statement was going to create tides. If I may have your attention once more, he spoke over the mutters, silencing them. I am not yet finished. Before having an alliance with us, Konoha had an unshakable with another village, the village hidden in whirlpools. We need to procure back that level of an alliance with our former ally. Yashin, one of the more senior members of the council and one of the people who Baki actually respected for his relatively sensible arguments, spoke up. How do you propose we do that, Baki? Baki stared dead in his eyes. We follow the same procedure that they did, to achieve what they were able to achieve. Seeing some confused faces in the council, Baki elaborated. The alliance between Konoha and Uzushiogakure no Sato was sealed by a marriage between the Shodai Hokage and a woman named Uzumaki Mito. The alliance lasted for decades, until Uzushiogakure fell to the combined attack of Kyumo and IWA. We can use that tradition to regain our alliance, which might be stronger than our previous one. He was pleased to see that some of the members were actually thinking upon this. However, one of them stood up, almost foaming at the mouth. Hiroto Renji was someone who always made Baki wonder just how he managed to get on the council. He was a hot-headed person, exploding over the smallest of arguments and had none of the tact that was required to play the incredibly subtle game of politics. Also, he took utmost glee in pointing out faults at other members, while he himself never participated actively in any argument. Baki suspected that Renji feared looking too stupid. "You can't possibly be serious. Like you said only moments ago," he sneered while saying we need to recover our forces from the invasion. Which means, we need every shinobi we have. Why would we offer one in the first place, and why would they accept in the first place?" Baki resisted the urge to rub his head at the moment. It would seem rather rude. "I thought it was quite obvious, council member, that given the history between the two, Konoha cannot afford to have IWA at their doorstep." Before Renji could blow up once again, another member spoke up, the slightest hints of irritation in his voice. "Just what are you trying to tell us, Baki?" Baki picked up the report written by Temari of the fight that took place between Naruto and Gaara. "I will summarize this for you, as you all don't have this and it would take a long time for everyone to read this." Temari stated in her report that Gaara was, quote, "soundly defeated by a single genin, even after he had fully manifested his bijou." He almost rolled his eyes at the exaggerated reaction that followed. She states that Uzumaki Naruto, the aforementioned genin, could create water out of thin air, and listen to this carefully, flash to places faster than she could even begin to follow. He briefly put the report down to add his own point. "When I say flash, I mean it in the literal sense, council members." He resumed from where he had left off. He then summoned a massive, dark blue fox of all things, with 7 tails, that was almost as large as Shikaku. Baki looked up again. "Now, we don't know why Uzumaki has a summoning contract for foxes, so dash. Could it be that he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi?" Everyone turned to look at the council member who said this. Baki thought hard about how to reply. The speculation was actually quite considerable. Why else would someone be able to summon foxes? "It could be," Baki carefully said, slowly as to emphasize the point, "but we don't have any evidence to substantiate that speculation. I have to stress on this, council member, do not hold on to that speculation. For all we know, the boy could have stumbled upon it by accident. As I said, there was nothing that pointed towards Uzumaki having the Kyuubi inside him. Not even a wisp of demonic chakra, as is the trademark feeling everyone gets when near a Jinchuriki." Baki was very uncomfortable with this topic, so he decided to move on. Moving on, a relatively recent report suggested that he is apprenticed to Jiraiya of the Sannin. They were both spotted traveling together through a town. Yashin once again raised a valid argument. It could be that they were simply on a mission together. Nothing you say points towards the claim of being an apprentice. Baki conceded the point with a nod. Indeed, it could be that as well. But keep in mind that in the past, no reports have ever stated that Jiraiya-sama needed someone with him on a mission, given how powerful he is. Why would he allow anyone to travel with him unless they were being trained or taught by him? Also, he was highly proficient in Fuinjutsu, just like Jiraiya-sama is. Yoshino nodded thoughtfully and sat back. Baki continued with his previous statement. "As I was saying, he seems to be apprenticed to Jiraiya-sama, and speaking of apprentice, I believe you are all aware as to who the last apprentice of the man was?" Thankfully, everyone nodded. Baki rested his arms on the table. This was the crux of his argument. To those who were not present at the Chunin exams, which was everyone, excluding himself, Uzumaki Naruto has been revealed to the world as Namake's Minato's only child. He dropped the bomb on them, waiting to see their reactions. And they were just like he expected them to be. Most of the members' jaws dropped in disbelief, some even choking on air. A few sensible members such as Yashin were taking deep breaths, trying to force rational thought as to how this was possible. Renji was the only one who was shaking his head, whispering under his breath, "This can't be, this can't be." A member asked after regaining their wits. "Do you have any evidence to substantiate your claim?" The question was asked slowly, for the members still had difficulties believing the latest revelation. Baki wordlessly picked up his file again and flipped to the photo of Naruto. He then put up the file on the table in such a way that everyone would be able to see. It only took a moment for everyone to connect the dots. Yoshino shook his head in slight awe. Looks like you were right, Baki. He really does look like his father. Baki added with a smirk, not only that, but he can use Hiraishin no Jutsu just like his father. But what does this have to do with us regaining our alliance? Baki grinned as he put his proposal forward. It should be quite obvious by now, we offer Temari in marriage as a gesture of good faith on our part. Renji frowned. Why Temari? She is the daughter of our late Kage, and is quite skilled. Couldn't we offer someone less significant? Baki looked at Renji, fully intent on shutting him up. Believe me, council member, when I say this. If we are going to offer a marriage proposal to someone as important as Namake's Naruto, we have to ensure that the person from our side is of equal status as him. Naruto and Temari, both are children of a Kage. Any children that would result from their marriage would become formidable shinobi when they grow up. We can insert a clause stating that their eldest child must become the liaison for both of our villages after becoming a chunin. Baki could have said that their eldest child should be married back into Suna, but they were in no position to make any demands from Konoha. It was best to stay on the safe side and make him her liaison after becoming a chunin, or a dual citizen. Also, the news of the Namake's having an heir would have probably reached IWA by now. Given how much the son is like the father and how IWA feared him, their safety could be guaranteed. Or, IWA would probably try to assassinate Naruto before he became too powerful for their liking. But that was a risk they had to take. Regain the alliance, or face IWA alone. The council pondered over Baki's proposal. It was more than enough to gain back their alliance. Perhaps Konoha was benefiting too much from this, but they had no choice other than to offer Konoha as much as they can. Like Baki, they came to the conclusion that they really weren't in a position to demand anything from Konoha. But they would have a powerful ally once again, with powerful shinobi in their command. Soon, everyone came to an agreement and the decision was made official. The offer was sent, proposing a marriage contract to the Konoha Council. All they had to do now was wait. XXXXXXX. What did you say? The yell echoed throughout the building, the rage in it clear for all those who hear it. Temari gave her hottest glare yet to Baki, who was standing right in front of her and her siblings, doing his best not to show any nervousness or fear. Unsurprisingly, Kankuro found himself hiding from his sister's wrath, behind the back of his younger brother. The former was quite old. Kankuro had hid from his sister a number of times in the past, for he was quite scared of her. Whenever she got angry, he was her usual outlet for that anger, for neither of them dared to get close to Gaara. Only the spot to hide had changed. Ever since they had returned to their home, Kankuro had seen an incredible change in Gaara. Gaara had stopped threatening everyone who came in his sight, and wasn't radiating bloodlust constantly. Perhaps the best thing was that he hadn't killed once upon his return from Konoha. However, the one part that didn't change was that Gaara never got afraid of Temari when she was enraged. Kankuro knew Gaara had no grasp of how to interpret certain feelings, but time heals all wounds. Anyway, the point was that his sister was enraged beyond all belief, and he was using Gaara as a human shield. Temari was not in the best of moods as she stood in front of her sensei. Carefully reining in her anger, she managed to keep her voice steady as she spoke. Why are you doing this to me? Baki kept his face carefully neutral, trying not to show the pity he felt for his soon-to-be former student. Pity was the last thing Temari needed right now. This reaction was not exactly unexpected. In fact, I was more worried about how Gaara would react. It's nothing short of a miracle he hasn't used sand burial on me already. He took a deep breath and began his explanation. This is a direct order from the council itself, Temari. We need this to cement our alliance with the Leaf once more. Temari grit her teeth, unwilling to just lose like this. So you will just offer me up like a lamb to be sacrificed? Wasn't there any other way? Baki shook his head sadly. I'm sorry, Temari, but there was no other way. Do you think this order would have gotten passed if there was? Tamari just wanted to scream her throat hoarse. So much injustice was being done to her, and she couldn't do anything about it. What was worse was that they seemed to think she was the only one who could perform this duty, and they were right. Kankuro was too much of an idiot to do this, and the village would sooner sacrifice their shinobi than give up their Jinchuriki, never minding the fact that Gaara was a former blood-lusting psychopath, so there was a dense air of mistrust around him. She painfully reminded herself that a shinobi's duty is to endure and sacrifice for their village, no matter what the circumstances. I don't like this, but I know that I have to do my duty, sensei. Baki smiled sadly and nodded, that you do. Has my future husband been decided? Baki considered whether or not to tell her. However, before he could say anything, Gaara spoke up. I want to know as well, Baki. Okay, now there was no way to back out of this. Even though Gaara restrained himself greatly from killing anyone in his sight, Baki was not going to take a risk. Gaara's newfound protectiveness for his siblings was apparent, and it was nothing short of a miracle that he hadn't killed Baki for giving his sister away to Konoha, just like that. Clearing his throat, he simply answered the question. Yes. He sweat a little when he saw 3 sets of eyes looking at him expectantly. One was pure curiosity, the other was curiosity mixed with suspicion, and the last one was impatience and rage, combined with acceptance. You can guess who they are. Tamari tapped her foot in irritation. Well, out with it. Who is it? Baki took a deep breath. Here goes nothing. He is the same person who defeated Gaara. You may know him as Namake's Naruto. Tamari blinked, and blinked again. And blinked again. Her thoughts drifted back to her hot, make-out session with the blonde in the alley. She didn't realize it, but her face was slowly turning red enough to give Gaara's hair a run for its money. Baki frowned in concern. Tamari? I see. I have a lot to think about, sensei. I'll see you later. Completely unlike her, Tamari turned and hastily walked away, leaving a confused audience behind her. Baki had a puzzled expression. Tamari never acted like this before. But then again, this situation is a first for her, so this might have prompted a new response as well. He turned to the other two, you two are dismissed as well. You best leave her alone for a while. This is a very big and sudden decision she has been forced to agree to. It's best if she gathers her thoughts for a while. With that, Baki left. Gaara turned to Kankuro, a very rare, confused expression on his face. Kankuro, do you know why Nasan left? Kankuro shrugged in confusion, even I don't know Gaara. You can never know what's going on in women's heads. XXXXXXX. Tamari hastily made her way to the training ground that was reserved only for the Kazekages, however as the children of a Kage, they got access to it without any problem. She made her way to her favorite spot, on the lowest branch of one of the few trees that were in the training grounds. She climbed onto the branch, and finally let out the giggle she had been keeping inside her. It's so surreal. I mean, what are the odds? I never imagined that this would happen. The giggles receded and a soft smile to its place as she gazed at the setting sun. She still couldn't wrap her head around it. She was going to get married to Naruto of all people. The same Naruto who she had feelings for, and had only grown from the time she had come back to Suna. In all honesty, she never thought that she could form a relationship with him as much as she wanted to, and she pretty much believed that he thought the same. She was of Suna, and he was of Konoha. But it was almost as if the universe wanted to prove both of them wrong, but for the good. Then the confusion and hesitance hit her, with a pinch of insecurity. Was she really ready to get married? No. Granted, she did have, dare she say, strong feelings for the blonde, but were they strong enough that she could happily live with him as a permanent partner? She didn't know that. Was she ready to make this sort of commitment so early in her life? Her feelings for Naruto and her duty as a kunoichi of her village were making her thoughts nothing less than a mess. Would Naruto be happy that he would have to spend his whole life bonded to her as her husband? What if he isn't happy? She groaned as she rubbed her head, trying to make some sense out of the mess that was her mind. In an attempt to block out the incoming headache, she diverted the train of thought to the political implications of the marriage. She was the daughter of the Yandame Kazekage, and Naruto was the only son of the Yandame Hokage, arguably the most dangerous man the Leaf had ever produced, and it was clear as drinking water that Naruto was well on his way to claim that title for himself. The marriage between two children of two Kages was sure an effective way to cement an alliance between two villages. Not only that, but her interest in Naruto had led her to attempt to study his background when she was back in Suna. Shocked was an understatement, to say the least. She had known that Naruto went by the surname of Uzumaki, so she researched that first. Interestingly, that was the name of the clan that was cousins with the legendary Senju clan, and allies of Konoha. The Uzumaki clan lived in Yuzushiobakure no Sato, the land hidden in whirlpools. But it was wiped out in the last war, with the combined efforts of Kumo and IWA. But apparently there was a survivor who made it to Konoha and married the Yandame to give birth to Naruto. Of course, since there was only one survivor, the clan was then given a seat in the council, as a gesture of the friendship they used to have with the village. Which meant that Naruto was now the sole heir of the Uzumaki clan, soon to be head, because of undoubtedly making Chunin. Another shocking fact was that Naruto was the head of two clans, not one. It was no secret that the person who becomes a Kage, his name is automatically granted clan status. In essence, Naruto was the soon-to-be head of Namake's clan as well. He would become a very powerful figure in village politics, with two clan seats backing him. That was a lot of power and responsibility for a single person. She thought with some relief that he would have her to share the responsibilities. He wouldn't have to be alone in that. Finally, her thoughts took a turn that was long coming. Her face turned red as she suddenly thought about the implications of her marriage to Naruto. More specifically, what they have to do on their wedding night. Temari's entire face went the shade of Gaara's hair red. She recalled what they had done in the alley that night, her and Naruto. The places his hands had touched. She let out an embarrassed squeal as she put her face in hands. Why was she getting so embarrassed? It didn't make any sense. In the end, her thoughts came to this: while she was happy that she was getting to marry someone like Naruto and not some snob, like the Uchiha, she wanted to see if the bond that was there between them had the potential to grow stronger or not. Whether both of them were truly capable of loving each other or not. And she wouldn't say no to any more naughty things that happened between them along the way, that helped reinforce that bond. Nope, not at all. XXXXXXX. Tsunade watched amused, did Shizune, as both Naruto and Jiraiya quarreled like children. This was the first time she was seeing Naruto get so heated in an argument so childish such as this. Lame as hell, mind you. You are always going on and on and on about how you're such an awesome shinobi. And yet, you got nailed by her perverted attack? You Aro Sennin. You are you Sai. The two of them were literally butting heads, teeth grounding audibly. Naruto was the first to back off, a smirk on his face. It felt good to act childish once in a while, especially when he is making fun of his perverted godfather. You know I'm right, Aro Sennin. You know Naruto, that's quite an apt nickname for Jiraiya, Tsunade chuckled in mirth. Jiraiya's head instantly dropped in depression. Naruto nodded graciously. In all honesty, I never really thought about it. It simply came out of my mouth at the moment. The journey back to Konoha had been covered in very high spirits. Tsunade finally had an air around her that felt like the Hokage she was about to become. Soon enough, the gates of Konoha came within their sight, the size of an ant. Jiraiya scoffed, "Humph. You people have no respect for me." He received 3 deadpan stares at the same time, causing him to chuckle nervously as he rubbed the back of his head. Naruto turned his head away, spotting the gates of Konoha in the distance. All of a sudden, a thought popped into his head, causing him to grin challengingly. Both Tsunade and Shizune noticed the grin, and knew a devious thought had just taken root in the crazy mind of Uzumaki Naruto. Hey, Aro Sennin. The call caused Jiraiya to almost cry at him in indignance. but stopped when he noticed the grin on that face. What's on your mind, Gaki? Naruto pointed his index finger in the direction of the gates. You can see them, right? The three of them had to squint a little, but nodded after a moment. We've reached. What about it? Naruto's smirk could have put almost every ANBU in Konoha on alert. Care for a race? Just you and me. Jiraiya laughed haughtily and said, Brat. You are 100 years too young to even challenge the like of me. But then he added with a cocky smile, but I wouldn't mind showing you just how inferior you are. Excuse me, an irritated voice cut into their challenge and both turned to face an annoyed Tsunade, her right hand cocked on her hip and foot tapping the ground in irritation. Shizen simply stood behind her, not knowing what to do. I hope you weren't planning to forget that we are here too. Naruto's face suddenly changed into a completely innocent expression, something that caused Tsunade to stiffen in guard. She rather preferred his devious expression rather than this. At least that look suited him. This look almost had her convinced that Naruto was a completely innocent boy. Oh no, not at all. Naruto denied with a shake of his head as he took off his backpack, holding it out to Tsunade, who raised an eyebrow in question. Naruto just put his hand forward, just hold it for a second please? Tsunade begrudgingly took the backpack and slung it over her right shoulder, only because the brat said please though. She was confused when Naruto then walked around her so that he was standing right behind her and Shizen. You are a part of this race as well. In fact, he slung his hands over the shoulders of both of them, you both are the referees. With that, he flashed them to the marker he had put on the gates of Konoha. Naruto turned to Jiraiya, who shook his head and said, Tsunade will beat you into the ground for not warning her. Naruto waved dismissively, she won't. Even if she attempts to do that, she's way too slow to catch someone as fast as me. Also, a shinobi must always be on guard. Jiraiya snorted but said nothing. He liked this characteristic of Naruto. The kid didn't give a damn about who wanted to beat him and had the balls and skills to pull off such a stunt. He picked up a pebble and bounced it in his hand. You ready? Naruto came to stand beside him, having deactivated the resistance seals for this. Ready when you are. Jiraiya flicked his finger, sending the pebble flying into the air. The both tensed as it neared the ground, and as soon as it touched the ground, they both disappeared. Tsunade and Shizen blinked as they suddenly found themselves standing right at the gates of Konoha. The gate guards, Izumo and Kotetsu, blinked in shock as they found themselves suddenly staring at one of the legendary figures of Konoha. Senju Tsunade was not only considered the strongest kunoichi in the elemental nations, but also the most beautiful as well. And right now they found themselves scared, for her beautiful face was angry as hell. Tsunade clenched her fist and snarled, that brat. Didn't even give me a warning and forcing me into this petty race. However, her rant was cut off as two dust clouds rapidly made their way to her position. Remembering why Naruto had sent her here like this, she grudgingly kept an eye on them, ready to see who was winner. Both figures shot past her right into the village, leaving a surprised Tsunade and Shizen. They had both seen who was the winner. Of course, there was little doubt. Jiraiya huffed as he tried to catch his breath, looking at an equally huffing Naruto. The brat had almost beat him. His reflexes were as scary as ever, for Naruto had dashed as soon as the stone was a millimeter above the ground, with Jiraiya immediately dashing after. If not for the flex of his chakra near the end, he would have totally lost. Would you look at that? Jiraiya almost lost to a 13-year-old. Both of them turned to see a smirking Tsunade walking up to them, carelessly throwing Naruto's bag at him. Jiraiya looked away petulantly. But I didn't. Also, I was carrying extra luggage. Naruto slung his bag, I will concede to my defeat. You are better than me, Arosenin, for now at least. Jiraiya's triumphant smirk faltered at the end of Naruto's sentence. Of course, he planned on taking the brat on a training trip sometime later, and he had no doubts that Naruto would surpass him. Naruto faced the three of them. Alright, my mission finishes over here. I'll report tomorrow morning for debriefing, Bachan. Enjoy your walk of fame, Hokage-sama. He added teasingly before disappearing in a flash. Tsunade's eye twitched in irritation before a small smile of fondness came onto her face. He may look like his father, and even act like him most of the time, but he sure has his mother's moments as well. With that, they made their way to the Hokage Tower. Naruto wasn't wrong. People were not discreet at all when they saw two of the Sannin walking together, one of which had returned from an absence of almost a decade and a half. Tsunade found herself smiling against her while as she gazed upon the home of her precious people once again. People were smiling in relief after seeing two powerful shinobi of Konoha walking through the streets. Things were still a bit shaky among the civilians, but Tsunade's appearance might cause them to settle back down, Jiraiya mused. As they reached towards the Hokage's tower and in a few minutes, the Hokage's office, Tsunade found herself having an epiphany. It hit her that she really had missed her sensei. Jiraiya saw this and allowed her a few moments to collect herself. Tsunade took a few deep breaths to calm herself down. When she was ready, she raised a slightly shaking hand and knocked the door 3 times. Enter. The same, raspy old voice that she had heard since her genin days, full of wisdom, gave the command. Tsunade opened the door and was greeted with what she should have expected, but still filled her with a strange amount of relief and nostalgia. Sarutobi Hiruzen was sitting at the Hokage's desk, doing paperwork. His eyes lifted up and widened in surprise. He slowly put down his writing brush and stood up, never wavering his eyes from Tsunade. When he spoke, his voice conveyed suffering and relief at the same time. Tsunade. Tsunade herself was finding it hard to rein in her tears. It hit her once again. If it hadn't been for Naruto, Hiruzen would not have been standing here right now. He would either have been in a hospital or worse, buried in a grave, 6 feet under the ground. I'm back, sensei. Tsunade said as she gave the old man a watery smile. It seemed that she had missed him more than she had thought. Sarutobi was more than just a sensei to her. He had been more like a father to all of her team. He nurtured them with his own 2 hands. He might have been tough as hell, but at the end of the day, he treated Team 7 like his own children. To her surprise, he laughed. Laughed hard, and Jiraiya and the ANBU in the room stared open-mouthed, for that was the heartiest laugh they had heard from the Hokage in years. Finally, when he stopped laughing, he said, I'm so happy to see you back, Tsunade. He gave the signal to his guards to give them some privacy. Once they had left, he sealed the room completely. He then walked around the table and pulled out his secret stash of sake from the fake compartment in his drawer. He took out 3 cups and poured all of them a drink. He winked as he handed them the sake. I normally restrain myself, but I believe this occasion calls for some celebration. Tsunade smirked as she took her cup, followed by Jiraiya. They clinked their cups together and drank it all in one gulp, with Tsunade giving it an approving nod. Nice sake. Hiruzen smirked, being Hokage has privileges, you know. Jiraiya sighed happily as he refilled and drank once again. I should have invited the Gaki to drink with us. After all, he winked at his teammate, he performed his first S-rank mission quite impressively. Hiruzen made a sound of realization. Ah yes. We should have called him. To celebrate his first successful mission as a Jonin, that 2S rank. I knew I made a correct choice in promoting him. I want your report on this, Jiraiya. I know Naruto's will reach to me by tomorrow morning. Jiraiya nodded, will do, sensei. Tsunade frowned, how do you know that his report will reach you tomorrow morning? He said that in front of us, not you. Hiruzen smiled, it has been his habit ever since he started doing missions. He always gives in his report a day after the mission is completed. A very peculiar habit though, if I do say so myself. I never quite found out the reason why. He walked around his table, however, he has been very consistent, so I have no reason to doubt that he wouldn't deliver it tomorrow morning. Before they could continue catching up and discussing about Naruto, there was a knock at the door. All 3 of them gave the door an annoyed look, before Sarutobi put his sake away, sitting back on his chair. Tsunade and Jiraiya stood in front of his desk, as there were no chairs for them to sit on. Hiruzen unsealed the privacy seals and called his ANBU back. Once they were back in their positions, he gave the order. Enter. Hiruzen and Jiraiya were able to keep their faces blank, however Tsunade's tongue soured as she took in the arrivals. The elders, Hamura and Koharu, had been her least favorite people when she was at Genin and Chunin under her sensei. She schooled her expression as they bowed to her. Welcome back, Tsunade-sama, they bowed. Even though the respect was shown, she still considered them highly annoyed. A pair of old, senile fools completely set in their ways of thinking. They were also quite assertive, wanting their opinion to be the only decision there is, despite of them only being advisors to the Hokage. They also believed that they knew best, if she remembered correctly. She would have to talk to Sensei about doing something about them. They should have retired quite some time ago. They looked above from their bow and then turned their attention to the Hokage, completely ignoring the other Sannin in the room. Of course, Jiraiya had no problem in returning the favor. He never liked them in the first place, and they fell from his eyes even more when he heard from Hiruzen just how vocal they had been against Naruto's promotion to Chunin, let alone Jonin, even if he was deserving. Hokage-sama, now that Tsunade-sama is here, perhaps we should brief her on the recent happenings and news from Sunagakure? Hamura's suggestion earned a nod from Hiruzen and a questioning eyebrow from Jiraiya and Tsunade. Hiruzen took out a scroll from his drawer and handed it to his successor. I want to hear what your thoughts are on this, Tsunade. Jiraiya moved closer to Tsunade to read over the contents of the scroll. Both their eyebrows rose in surprise and incredulity as they finished reading it. Shocked looks were sent to the old Hokage, who sighed and said, I have already given my approval to this. They made an offer that would have been otherwise foolish to refuse. Jiraiya pulled Tsunade to the side to whisper to her, this is ridiculous. They can't do this to a clan head, can they? Tsunade's eyes widened a bit at that. She had forgotten that after becoming Jonin, Naruto had essentially become clan head to Uzumaki and Namake's clans, in all but official capacity. She grudgingly said, he hasn't been officially appointed as such and has yet to take his seat at the council. This wouldn't have been possible if he had been clan head in official capacity without his permission, but since he's not, it could be, has been done. He can't refuse the order of the Hokage, Jiraiya. Jiraiya frowned, obviously not liking the notion that his sensei dictated the life of his godson like this. Naruto would now have to marry someone from another village for his duty. He would never get a shot at love on his own. But like Tsunade said, Naruto was not in any capacity to refuse. Tsunade did not like this as well. She had slowly taken a liking to Naruto on their way back to Konoha, and she saw what kind of a person Naruto was. He did not deserve to be treated like this. She racked her brain, trying to see the positive side to this. After a few moments, a stray thought caused her to back up and a small smile formed on her face. She faced the Hokage and the elders. The full council has agreed to this? Hiruzen nodded in affirmative. The elders nodded as well, hi. Her smile turned into a small grin. She needed to double-check if her sensei had thought this through from all angles or not, before making his decision. Does the council also believe that Suna is aware of Naruto's heritage? Hiruzen frowned and looked at Jiraiya in confusion, who cursed mentally and gave him an apologetic look. He turned back to Tsunade. It seems that Jiraiya forgot to tell you what happened in the Chunin exams, Tsunade. Naruto publicly announced his heritage. It is safe to assume by now, all the elemental nations know just who Naruto is. Tsunade gave an annoyed look to Jiraiya, who rubbed the back of his head sheepishly. Deciding that she would deal with him later, she asked them her next question. Then am I to assume that the council has also thought about the domestic ramifications of Naruto's marriage? Her grin widened when a look of confusion passed among the elders, Jiraiya and her sensei. However, Sarutobi's eyes widened as he caught on to the meaning of her question. An expression passed over his face as he viciously cursed himself for not thinking about this sooner, but then a grin passed over his face when he realized what it meant for Naruto. Jiraiya was a little slow to catch up, but then too grinned when he came to the same realization as her and sensei. The elders still hadn't caught up to them. Koharu spoke for both of them. We're not sure what you mean, Tsunade-sama. With a smirk worthy to match Naruto's in deviousness, she explained. When Naruto marries, he will officially have claimed his position as the head of both Namake's and Uzumaki clans. Meaning he will inherit everything from both of those clans, including funds, property and land in those clans' possessions. That also includes the seats of both the clans on the council. Surely you realized this before sending the reply? The faces of both the elders had dropped in dismay. They never realized that, by marrying off Naruto, they were pushing for him to become clan head for two clans. How could they have overlooked something as important as this? Hiruzen was enjoying the looks on the faces of his former teammates' faces. To add into their dismay, he added with a chuckle, "Of course, I should have realized this when I appointed him as a jonin." Hamura's and Koharu's faces showed horror by now. They had completely overlooked the fact that a person becomes eligible for head of clan position upon becoming a chunin or jonin. They were too biased against Naruto, too focused on trying to keep him under their control, that they lost sight of other things. They should have realized this the moment Hiruzen appointed him a jonin. Naruto was already clan head long before this discussion was taking place. It just needed to be officialized. Hiruzen looked entirely too amused. It seems you need a moment, Hamura and Koharu. Perhaps you would like to step outside the room? Me and my students have a few things to catch up on. The elders walked out of room in a daze. The three of them finally let loose their chuckles, or in Jiraiya's case, laughter. Jiraiya said as he calmed down, "It's about time someone taught them a lesson." Hiruzen smirked as he looked at his student. "Looks like I made the right choice in choosing my successor. You know you're worthy if you are able to outsmart them." However, the atmosphere turned serious when Jiraiya brought up another concern. However, we must not overlook the consequences of Naruto revealing his heritage. Hiruzen and Tsunade immediately caught on to what he was saying. The former had been worrying about this for a long time. Minato's enemies now had a new target to focus on. If they couldn't get revenge on the Yondaime, they would take it out on their son. XXXXXXX. Naruto had flashed to his apartment and immediately disassembled his backpack. After taking a very satisfying hot water shower in his bathroom, he cooked himself fish, rice, and eggs. Preservative seals were oh so awesome. After he finished his meal, he sat on the couch and put on a movie. He wondered on what to do. After finishing an S-rank mission, it was mandatory for the shinobi to at least take a week of leave, maximum 2 weeks. However, Naruto knew he was quickly going to get bored of doing nothing for a week straight. He mentally recounted what he couldn't do. He was in no mood to work on seals right now. Training was out of the question, because he had just returned from a mission. He had nothing to read, and he had no video games, for he was firm of the belief that they rot your mind. "You sure are acting like a brat right now, you know," came the voice from within. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Not all of us can sleep on a whim like you, Kurama. You are sleeping almost all the time when you have nothing to do." Naruto heard a scoff. "Whatever, brat. What I want to say is you could seek your pineapple-headed friend for a game of shogi. Good exercise for your feeble, human mind." Naruto ignored the insult as he thought about the suggestion. It was not bad at all, and he would have fun teasing Shikamaru about his added duties as well. He got up from the couch and went to his room to change clothes. A minute later, he emerged in something casual. A dirty white, long-sleeves t-shirt folded to his elbows, with dark blue jeans. Over the t-shirt, he wore a black shirt with buttons opened, sleeves folded till elbows. The necklace Tsunade had given him hung out of his t-shirt. All in all, he looked as cool as a breeze. He stepped outside of his building and began a slow walk, having located the chakra signature of his friend in the training ground 10. He allowed his feet to carry him as he thought about the possible changes that could happen now that Tsunade was back. On the way back, Jiraiya had once told him that Tsunade had once asked Sarutobi permission to start a medic training program. However, it was wartime, and there weren't enough shinobi to spare for the training program, not to mention the lack of interest on the part of many shinobi. So lost he was in his thoughts that he failed to notice the appreciative looks from the female population that were being sent in his direction. Girls that were 8 to 9 years old were blushing while looking at him, while the girls his age were shamelessly checking him out. But again, he was too lost in his thoughts to really notice that. He was about to turn towards the training grounds when he sighed. This was getting boring very fast. Come out, Kanoamaru. I won't tell you a second time. As soon as he had shouted, a brown-haired boy darted around the corner and came running over to him. Naruto Nii-chan. Play ninja with me. That earned him a harsh finger flick, right in the center of the forehead. Kanoamaru yelped, immediately rubbing the spot. Naruto looked at his unofficial charge with some amusement. Kanoamaru wanting to play ninja with him was a common request by now. But since today was a day on which Naruto had nothing to do, why not give a few life lessons to the kid? Teach him the real meaning of being a ninja. Kanoamaru was immediately indignant. What was that for? I won't be playing ninja with you today, Kanoamaru, came the bored reply. Then he frowned. Also, aren't you supposed to be in the academy right now? Indeed, it was only noon right now, so the young Sarutobi should have been having lunch in his class. Kanoamaru crossed his arms and pouted. Irika-sensei's lessons are very boring. Naruto let out a small chuckle. You aren't wrong in saying that. However, his face adopted a stern expression. That excuse is not enough for you to skip classes. They are teaching you things that will allow you to survive as a shinobi. Even I found those classes dreadfully boring, but I always followed what was going on. No need to tell the kid that he skipped quite a few classes himself because of his stupidity act. Of course, he had also been way ahead of his class. Also, you should start training seriously instead of playing ninja in your free time. It is never too early for a shinobi to start training on chakra control. Kanoamaru frowned. Does this mean you will no longer play ninja with me? Naruto sighed, trying to decide how to best explain this. He looked around, thoughts running wild, when he spotted the Hokage monument. An idea sprang into his head, and without giving any warning to the kid, he grabbed his shoulder and flashed away. Kanoamaru blinked when he suddenly found himself standing over the head of the yondaime. He shrieked and backed off, only to collide with something solid. Turning back, he saw the face of Naruto, looking over the village. Being a ninja is not a game, Kanoamaru, Naruto said softly, looking into the eyes of his charge. Sure, kids can play, but in the world that we grow up, it is best not to treat it as a game. He sat down, pulling the kid down with him. Kanoamaru sat beside his idol and frowned, not understanding what Naruto was trying to say. What do you mean, Naruto Nii-chan? Naruto did not look away from the village. Let me ask you something, Kanoamaru. What do you think it means to be a shinobi? Kanoamaru opened his mouth to answer, and stopped. He thought really hard, something he very rarely did. It was obviously a question that had a deep answer. He thought and thought, but the answer was lost to him. To be a shinobi means to endure. A shinobi is the one who can follow or lead others into any darkness and work together to overcome that darkness and make it out the other side. A shinobi walks towards danger when everyone else is running away. That is because it is the duty of a shinobi to look at any foe and say bring it. That is because shinobi exist to protect those who can't protect themselves. Naruto recited the same answer that Gigi had given to him years ago. The answer had a deep and profound effect on him. It was one of the main reasons he pushed himself so hard every day to get strong, so he could protect his loved ones. He hoped it would have the same effect on Kanoamaru. The said boy was deeply thinking about Naruto's answer. He had never thought like that, always thinking it as a game, that being a shinobi meant to throw cool jutsu around. He had never imagined there would be such a deep reason behind what being a shinobi meant. Only one thing came to his mind right now. Why are you telling me this? Your grandfather almost lost his life in the invasion. The words were like a splash of cold water down Kanoamaru's spine. The announcement filled him with dread, which was visible in a violent shiver on the outside. W what? H how? Naruto gave an expressionless look to the boy. He acted like a true shinobi. I told you, didn't I? Being a shinobi is not a game, a Hokage less so. Konohamaru viciously tried to hold back his tears upon hearing the news of his grandfather. He had never known about this. Why was Naruto Nii-chan telling him all of this? To teach you a lesson, came the answer, almost as if Naruto had read his thoughts. I am telling you this to teach you a lesson, Konohamaru. You want to become Hokage, don't you? At the mention of his ultimate goal, Konohamaru hastily wiped his tears off. Why yeah. Naruto stood up, brushing his pants. Then start taking your training seriously. Not too much, though. Take ample time to rest and relax, so your body can appropriately recover as well. Eat healthy food in ample amounts, without hesitating. Just don't joke around when it comes to your duties as a shinobi, alright? Konohamaru stood at attention, determination coursing through him. Hi, Naruto Nii-chan. Naruto smiled and ruffled the boy's hair. Good. And if you need any help on how to properly train, don't hesitate to ask. Become a shinobi first, then I'll tell you what it means to be Hokage, alright? Konohamaru smiled and nodded. He would make his brother and grandfather proud of him by becoming a true shinobi. Hi, Naruto Nii-chan. But don't you forget this, he pointed a finger at the blonde challengingly, we are still rivals for Hokage. Naruto chuckled, that's the spirit. Now let's get you back to the academy. He put a hand on Konohamaru's shoulder and flashed to the only person in the academy who had his Hiraian seal on himself. XXXXXXX. Irika sat annoyed at his desk as the lunch hour slowly came to an end. He had finished his lunch in the first 15 minutes, and spent the rest of the hour thinking about the latest menace of his class, the grandson of Sandaime Hokage, Sarutobi Konohamaru. The boy almost always made trouble for him, even more so than what Naruto did while he was in the academy. One would think that Irika would have some experience in dealing with troublesome kids like Konohamaru because of having the resident prankster of Konoha as a former student, but no. Just as the bell rang, signaling the end of lunch hour, he almost fell on his back while sitting in his chair when two people appeared so suddenly in front of him. After recollecting himself, his eyes widened when he recognized the two people. The short one was easy because it was his rampant student, who had ditched class because he was too bored. The other one took a moment because Irika had never seen Naruto look so cool. Naruto smiled and greeted his former teacher, brother figure. It had been a very long time since he had talked to Irika. How's it going, Irika-sensei? Well, if it isn't Naruto. Irika was very pleasantly surprised to see his former, favorite student. It had really been a long time for both of them. Irika-sensei, I'm just here to return Konohamaru in your care, Naruto gestured to his young shinobi in making, who was looking all kinds of depressed at being stuck in Irika's boring lectures. Of course, sudden appearance of strangers was bound to attract the students' attention, who began to excitedly chatter. Naruto took note of this and gave an apologetic smile to Irika. We'll talk later, okay, Irika-sensei? I won't be disturbing your class any more than they already are. With that, he vanished in a blue flash, leaving a dumbfounded Irika to wonder that since when was Naruto capable of doing something like that. Naruto appeared back at the head of his father. Suddenly, he didn't feel like doing anything at all. Deciding to rest for a while, he lay down, using his jacket to cover his face from the sunrays. Maybe he would just laze around today. As he drifted off, he absently wondered if this is what Shikamaru felt every day. XXXXXXX. Sakura was humming the tune of her favorite song as she walked into Sasuke's hospital room. She had been daily checking up on Kakashi and Sasuke. Of course, that is not to say that she was still a hardcore fangirl. She had ditched those ways long ago, thanks to her blonde teammate. She still pined after him, hoping that he would someday accept her love. Over the course of the past few weeks, she had ample time to train and visit her sensei and teammate, though she missed the presence of Naruto. Team 7 had almost become a second family to her, and that family was incomplete, which left her feeling incomplete. She had gone to the Sandaime many times during the blonde's absence, to inquire when he would return. The old Hokage's answer had been the same every time, that Naruto was away on a very important mission for the village. Every time, she had returned home unsatisfied with his answer. She continued her visits to Kakashi and Sasuke, hoping that at least one of them would wake up and talk back to her. On that note, she had noticed something strange between Naruto and Sasuke. Ever since the second phase of the Chunin exams, Naruto had become a little more cautious when he was around Sasuke. It was understandable, given how Sasuke had viciously attacked him back in the forest, but Sasuke deserved the benefit of doubt, given the strange energy that had been coursing through him. What Sakura hadn't realized that she had unintentionally used the cursed seal as an excuse for what went wrong for Sasuke. While the situation in the forest certainly put the blame on the curse mark correctly, she wouldn't realize until it would be too late that she would slowly, but steadily, start blaming every aspect of Sasuke's negative behavior on the curse mark. She opened the door to Sasuke's room. She frowned when she saw two people that she didn't recognize. One was a white-haired man, rather tall and looked to be around 50 years old, leaning against the far wall of the room with his arms crossed, looking at the room's second strange occupant. She was a woman who looked to be in her late 20s, with her blonde hair and two pigtails over a green jacket with the kanji for gambler written on it. The woman was holding her hands near Sasuke's head, a green glow emanating from her hands which Sakura recognized to be medical chakra. "Always mind your surroundings, Sakura," came a voice from her behind. She spun around, eyes widened on being startled like that. Naruto was leaning on the side of the door such that anyone opening the door would see him the last. She put her hand on her chest, breathing heavily as she recovered from the shock. Earlier, she would have just punched him in the head for scaring her like that, but Naruto had made it pretty clear how he felt about that before their bell test. "Don't scare me like that, Naruto," she said, her heartbeat now back to normal. Naruto shrugged and started eating an apple that he pulled out from somewhere. "You should not drop your guard when entering a room," he advised while happily munching on the juicy apple. Nevertheless, she smiled and said, "It is good to have you back, Naruto." Naruto smirked and merely nodded in reply, his mouth full of apple. She then turned to the woman, but smiled wide when she saw that Sasuke was groggily waking up. She ran over to hug him, thoughts of other occupants in the room fleeing her mind. Naruto shook his head in mild disappointment as he finished his apple. He didn't understand why Sakura pined after the Uchiha so much when he didn't even reciprocate her feelings. He tossed the remains of the apple into the dustbin and walked over to the bed. "Now that pretty boy here is awake, I'd like to introduce some people." Sasuke glared at Naruto for his choice of words. To his credit, the blonde ignored him entirely. Sakura thankfully released him from the constricting hug and turned to him, confusion swimming in her green eyes. Naruto waved towards Jiraiya. "He is Jiraiya of the Sannin, the Toad Sage from Mtamayaboku, and don't you start it." The last part was said harshly to the white-haired man, who was about to start another one of his kabuki dances. "You ruined my introduction, Naruto." "No, you do that quite spectacularly yourself," Naruto muttered to himself before coughing into his fist, turning to Sakura. She had wide eyes as she looked upon one of the most powerful shinobi in the entire world. "It is an honor to meet you, Jiraiya-sama." Jiraiya grinned at the respect he was given, not hearing Naruto's mutter, "Trust me, it's not." Naruto turned Sakura around with a hand on her shoulder, ignoring her protests of how she wanted to talk more to him. Naruto waved her protests away. "Don't worry. You'll be seeing a lot more of him in the future. Trust me on that." Sakura frowned disapprovingly at Naruto. But before she could voice it, Naruto introduced her to the woman in the room. "This lady here is Senju Tsunade, the slug Sannin and the one who woke Sasuke up from his coma." Sakura instantly had stars in her eyes as she was introduced to the strongest kunoichi in the elemental nations and the idol of all kunoichis in Konoha. "Tsunade-sama," she hurriedly bowed, "it is such an honor to meet you." She did not raise her head after the bow in the name of respect, though she was confused when Tsunade-sama suddenly spoke to Naruto. "See that brat? That is how you respect someone like me. Naruto snorted derisively, whatever you say, Granny. Only because she was in a hospital did she not punch the brat through the walls. While this was going on, Jiraiya was restraining his sniggers, Sakura was berating Naruto for disrespecting a Sannin, and Sasuke was blankly looking at the bickering between his teammate and the ridiculously busty woman. Seriously, look at the size of that. His hands would not even cover half. She is also our next Hokage. Naruto's voice broke Sasuke out of his rare, once in a while, perverted thoughts. Thankfully, no one had seen him gazing at the breasts of Senju Tsunade. Sakura frowned as she looked at the enormous bust of the blonde woman with slight jealousy. Then she self-consciously looked at her own chest. Her chest was nothing compared to that bust, and she doubted it ever would be. Then she backpedaled, W8. What do you mean, next Hokage? Naruto elaborated, Sandaime-sama had sent me an Erosen in here. He pointed to the indignant sage. To retrieve her, he pointed at the annoyed blonde, to become the next Hokage when he steps down. Also, I brought her back so she could heal Sasuke and Kakashi. He turned to Sasuke, you're welcome, by the way. Sasuke glared at the slightly smirking blonde. He was acting way too cocky for his liking. He looked down at his hands, hating the weakness he was feeling right now. He clenched his fist as he thought about just how he ended up in this hospital. Tsunade sighed and turned to Naruto. I need to see you in the Hokage's office the first thing tomorrow morning, Naruto. Naruto raised an eyebrow. Is it a new mission for me? Tsunade mentally smirked. Oh, it's a mission all right. Outward, she said, you can think of it as a long-term mission. Naruto looked perplexed for a moment, then recovered, going back to his bored look. I just recently became a jonin, you know? Wouldn't a long-term mission be more suited for someone with a little more experience than me in the field? Tsunade waved his worries away as she walked to the door. You wouldn't know how to handle a long-term mission if you don't try it. Besides, this mission is especially for you. Only you can do it. With those words, Tsunade left the room. Jiraiya coughed and walked towards the window. Perching on the windowsill, he turned and grinned at his apprentice. Yash, Naruto. I'll leave you with your team to catch up a bit. Got some research to take care of. With that, he was gone. Awkward silence reigned for a few moments, as neither one of them could figure out what to say. Sakura was the first to break the silence with a nervous chuckle. So, Naruto, can you tell us about your recent mission? Sasuke's head snapped up, remembering a piece of the conversation when Tsunade was in the room. You were gone with a Sannin, right? Naruto's bored expression betrayed nothing, but inside, he was curious. Why would Sasuke bring up that piece of the conversation? Yeah, actually. Though he is nothing like you can imagine, I assure you. In fact, both the Sannin are nothing like you are probably thinking, Naruto smirked in a lazy way. Sakura was confused. What do you mean? Naruto chuckled as he stood up to leave. It's definitely not my place to say. You know how it is, whatever you learn on a S-rank mission is confidential information, reserved only for the Hokage. No need to tell them that he knew that Jiraiya was a pervert long before they went on the mission. Also, he had noticed that Sasuke was showing signs of irritation that Sakura hadn't managed to notice. Twitching of his left eye, clenching of fist as if a dam was waiting to burst. He figured it was best if he and Sakura left. He had a feeling that whatever was going on in Sasuke's head, it was not good. Perhaps we should leave Sasuke to rest, Sakura, he said in a tone that was more of an order than a suggestion. Fortunately, there were very few bits and pieces of fangirl left in Sakura to rebel against him. Sakura looked like she didn't want to leave her crush alone, but a look from Naruto made her decision. With one last look to Sasuke, who was looking down, seemingly lost in his thoughts, she walked out of the room. She looked behind her to see that Naruto had walked out behind her and closed the door. It's best if we leave him to his thoughts for a while. He has a lot to think about his encounter with his brother, was the offered explanation, with a look that told her to keep quiet about this. Sakura's eyes widened, but Naruto ushered her away. Naruto closed the door and locked it with a subtle click. He turned to look at Sasuke, who had looked up to lock eyes with him. The shadow clone he had sent out with Sakura would keep her away from the conversation they were about to have. Naruto walked and closed the windows, pulling the curtains over. He pressed his hand to the wall, and seals erupted from it, spreading in a graceful pattern. After ensuring no one would eavesdrop on their conversation, he pulled a chair and sat down beside Sasuke's bed. "Thank you." Naruto raised an eyebrow. It was rare for the Uchiha to initiate a conversation, even rarer for him to say such words. "For what?" "For sending her away." "She was beginning to get on my nerves," came the blank reply, but Naruto picked up the slight traces of annoyance. Both of them remained quiet for a while, lost in their thoughts, until Naruto spoke. "It was rather commendable of you not to lose yourself back there," Naruto said with a tone of acknowledgement. Sasuke raised an eyebrow. "Did you get dumber or what?" "If I hadn't, I wouldn't be here right now." Naruto shook his head slightly. "I'm not talking about your actions. I'm talking about the hiki on your neck. Its power is quite addictive, usually activated in the situations that you faced a few weeks ago. Very impressive that you did not." "HN." Sasuke grunted, not knowing how to reply to that. Silence descended upon them again, and this time, Sasuke broke it first. "Back then," he began, causing Naruto to raise his head, "I discovered just how much distance is between me and my brother." Naruto took careful note of the fact that Sasuke didn't sound angry, scornful at all. The tone was entirely blank, like he was simply stating a fact. And that worried him. The Sasuke Naruto knew would be burning with the desire for revenge in this situation. He would have done anything to get out of here, to bridge the gap between him and his brother by any means. Naruto knew Sasuke to be highly impulsive when it came to matters concerning his brother. Itachi was a name that rose the adrenaline levels in Sasuke faster than being in a fight. He wasn't allowed any more time to think because Sasuke's next question snapped him from his thoughts. "Why was Itachi looking for you?" Sasuke stared Naruto dead in his eyes. The kind of eyes that put Naruto on edge. Naruto carefully considered on how to answer. After all, this was Itachi they were talking about. "You will find your answer if you remember the conversation we had before I left for my mission, Sasuke." "He's after the QB, then?" Naruto was surprised on the inside at how quickly Sasuke was able to connect the dots, but the surprise did not appear on his bored facade. He just nodded silently in reply. "Not just the QB." Sasuke raised an eyebrow in question, but Naruto shook his head, clearly implying that he would not talk anymore on the subject. "I'm starting to think this village can't help become as powerful as my brother." It was a mere mumble, something only meant for Sasuke's ears alone. But coupled with the silence of the room and Naruto's animalistic hearing, it was not discreet at all. For the first time in a long time, Naruto could honestly say he was truly shocked. He had just heard Sasuke contemplating on leaving the village, just to get more powerful, faster than what he was getting now. Sasuke was already a flight risk, but that was now nearing an edge that Naruto couldn't afford to tip. He had to stop this now. "Everyone becomes powerful in their own pace, Sasuke. If you continue to forcefully push beyond the absolute limit, it will only result in a burnout." Naruto leant forward, and Sasuke froze when he looked into Naruto's eyes. They were frigid, freezing him in place, for he could not tear away his own. They reminded him of his brother's eyes, the same cold, detached, ruthless eyes. "You think that this village should only cater to you and your needs?" The question was clearly rhetorical, and was spoken barely above a whisper, but it was spoken with so much menace that Sasuke could not stop that shiver that violently passed through his body. Naruto, to Sasuke, had always been a laid-back guy who owned the word serious when the situation called for it. But this was a totally new side of the blonde that he was seeing right now. "Make no mistake, Sasuke. The moment you put on the headband, the Hokage became the only person whose orders you have to ultimately follow. You now belong to the Leaf, before you belong to the clan. Every clan in Konoha obeys this rule. I don't see why you think you are an exception. Naruto's posture was very relaxed. He was leaning back in his chair, left ankle over right knee, elbows on the armrest, chin resting on hands, mouth hidden and only eyes visible. Yet, there was something in the air around him that screamed of danger. Your brother was a gem, Sasuke. A one of a kind. People might hail you as a genius, but even genius has class. Your genius cannot be compared to your brother's. Itachi's level of genius is something that only occurs once in many generations. If you think you can progress at the same speed that your brother did, you are dead wrong. Sasuke finally found his voice, and it quivered with rage. Are you saying I will never be able to kill my brother? Naruto's answer was short and precise, conveying exactly what he needed and nothing more. Just not now. Perhaps in a few years. Sasuke's rage only grew at the nonchalance of the answer. He hated when he wasn't taken seriously. Naruto stood up and walked over to the wall, laying his palm flat on it and disabling the seals on them. He turned to Sasuke, who looked only an inch away from snarling. I would stop that train of thought if I were you, Sasuke. Abandoning the village would give you nothing but a kill-on-sight order, he advised, causing Sasuke's rage to subside moderately, the Uchiha staring back at his hands with a blank gaze. Naruto turned back to Sasuke, causing the Uchiha to do a double take at the pleasant smile that adorned his face. It was as if he was back to his normal self, the previous second becoming a different person entirely. Well, Sasuke, get well soon. Naruto wished and was about to open the door to exit. If someone asked when he went back into Sasuke's room, he would just say that he forgot something and came to take it back. Naruto. The call stopped his hand on the handle. Removing it, he turned around and gave a questioning look to his former teammate. What would you do if I were to just run away? Naruto had to give credit to Sasuke to threaten his deserting so openly. Instead of answering the question, Naruto asked one of his own. You formed bonds when we were teammates, Sasuke. Bonds that were similar to the family that you once had. Ask yourself this, would you be willing to lose bonds like those a second time? Based on the widening of his eyes, Sasuke was totally unprepared for the question. Naruto made him realize just what Team 7 was to him now, making him doubt himself whether he could sever the bonds to just get revenge. Both their eyes snapped to the door when there was a click of the handle, before the door started opening. Naruto whispered to Sasuke, remember your friends, Sasuke. He was gone in a flash, the door swinging in the space where he was but a moment ago. A nurse appeared, looking concerned. Are you alright, Sasuke-san? I heard voices from your room. I was just talking to myself. Nothing to worry about, he assured the nurse. The nurse nodded and left, keeping the door open this time. Sasuke was still thinking about how Naruto had just outright threatened him. Not just that, but he had made it very clear that he was a very dangerous person. Sasuke hadn't even imagined or even dreamed that Naruto of all people had it in him to do it. Naruto made it clear that he would kill Sasuke if he had to protect Konoha. Sasuke glanced down in thought. He thought back to the conversation he had with Naruto before the blonde left for his mission. Naruto had bonds in this village, which he wanted to protect at all costs. Was that why he was so strong? Is that why he himself was not becoming as strong as he wanted to? Because he had nothing to protect? You have your friends, a part of his mind whispered at him. Sasuke frowned when he couldn't make sense out of his thoughts. One part of his mind whispered to him sweetly, saying that this village was only holding him back. Orochimaru had given him a way to get stronger, so he should take it. Another part of his mind said that he should remain in the village, grow stronger with his friends. He had already lost too many people, was he ready to lose more because of his desire for revenge? Or should he focus on revenge only? He didn't know which path to choose. XXXXXXX. Naruto came back from his daily morning run and made 3 clones to cook breakfast while he got refreshed for his meeting with the Hokage. After he was fully ready, he flashed right onto the roof of the Hokage tower, walking down rest of the way. He had been warned before not to directly flash into the Hokage's office, lest the ANBU mistake him for an enemy and kill him. He knocked on the door of the office and waited for the permission to enter. Once he heard Tsunade's voice from inside, he opened the door to find Tsunade standing beside the old man, who was seated in his chair. Looks like she is on a trial period until her official coronation, he thought as he closed the door behind him. Hiruzen and Tsunade straightened up a bit once they saw Naruto enter. He came to stand in front of them, expression bored but posture not as relaxed as to go hand in hand with his expression. He stood relaxed, but ready to act in an instant should any hostilities erupt. Tsunade felt quite bad for being one of the people to tell him that his love life was officially over before it even began. The kid didn't deserve it in her eyes. Hiruzen felt much worse than Tsunade, for he had been the one to make the decision to marry Naruto away without telling him. There were a few instances when he truly hated his position as the Hokage, for the decisions he had to make almost crushed his conscience with their weight. This was one of them. Naruto kicked off their conversation upon seeing the old folks weren't going to begin anytime soon. So, what's the mission? Hiruzen raised an eyebrow before turning to Tsunade with a questioning look. You told him it's a mission? Tsunade shrugged. It can be considered a long-term mission, can't it not? Hiruzen contemplated before shrugging himself. Well, you're not wrong. Anyways. He turned to Naruto with a most serious look on his face, making Naruto straighten on reflex. Naruto, first of all, I cannot express just how sorry I am to force you into this. I know there is no way I can ever earn back your trust and forgiveness after this. Naruto frowned in concern as he heard those words. He had never saw the old man look older than he really was. Plus those words rang alarm bells in his mind. Gigi had obviously done something that affected him in a very bad way and heavily blamed himself. So he did the only thing he could, steel himself and listen to whatever bad news the old man had landed him in. Perhaps he could still find a way out. What have you done? The words came out with more accusatory feeling than he intended, but they got the point across. Tsunade and Hiruzen flinched at the tone, and Tsunade, very slowly, took out a scroll from the desk drawer and held it out towards him. Naruto looked at the scroll with apprehension. Worst case scenario, they were kicking him out of the village for something he had apparently done. Then he would have to flee the village somehow and become a missing nin, who would then be on run from the Konoha hunter nin and Akatsuki. No pressure. He took it with calmness, without any show of fear, nervousness or anxiety. He opened the scroll and read it swiftly, his brain picking out the important sentences and points quickly. His first reaction was blankness. His mind went completely blank when he discovered that the scroll was a document stating that he was getting married to Sabaku no Temari from Suna. He was getting married, at 13 years of age. It was a surreal thought. Then his mind shifted to anger. Deep, unadulterated anger at the fact that the old man had just given him away like that, without asking for permission. It was completely uncalled on his part, not to mention illegal. You can't just do that to clan head without asking for his permission. Clan business was serious business, so serious that even the Hokage only interfered when only absolutely necessary. Also, the old man had shot his chance at love with Temari like it was something he did every day. Was it not enough for him to have ruined his childhood? Then his mind caught up with his most recent thought. The old man had offered him in marriage to Sabaku no Temari? The same Temari who wielded a huge fan, impressive wind style, badass attitude, and the absolutely fabulous body, including those creamy, never-ending long legs? The same one? After his brain finally caught up with the facts, the final reaction followed. Joy bubbled inside him like lava in a volcano, but he used all the mental strength that he had garnered over the years to keep that from showing on his face. Still, some memories escaped from his grasp, such as his first ever makeout session, causing a noticeable blush to spread over his cheeks. He was getting married to the person he genuinely had feelings that had only grown for. Not just any girl. Hiruzen and Tsunade frowned in concern at his silent reaction, but confusion replaced that when they saw a blush spread over his cheeks. Why was the boy blushing? Something the matter, Naruto? Tsunade's question made Naruto look up at them, scroll suddenly forgotten in his hands. He had the perfect look of a kid with his hand caught in a cookie jar. Eyes wide, cheeks reddening with a blush and mouth open. Tsunade had her eyes slightly narrowed as she spoke to the younger blonde. "Are you all right?" Naruto, for the first time in a long time, was short of a response. He couldn't think of what to say, and felt extremely awkward. He coughed into his fist. "Ahem. Yes, I'm fine. It's just that, I never expected this to happen." However, Tsunade's instincts to those sort of reactions were long honed over the years, thanks to having a teammate such as Jiraiya. She immediately knew that Naruto was hiding something big. He looked like he had past interactions with the daughter of the Kazekage. How does she know, you ask? Let's call it a woman's intuition. With an authoritative tone that Hiruzen would honestly say sounded like a mother suspicious of her child, Tsunade asked, "No," commanded. "I know you're hiding something, you ball of trouble, so spill." Naruto sputtered indignantly, "I'm not a ball of trouble. Trouble knocks my door, not the other way around." Tsunade was now starting to get irritated. "Don't change the topic, mister. What are you hiding?" Naruto looked at the irritated face of Tsunade, and the morbidly curious face of his surrogate grandfather, and pondered on what to say. The fact that they were watching him like hawks was not helping at all. His mind raced over excuses that popped into his head, each being discarded in an instant. Damn it, what happened to the training of looking innocent after a prank? Naruto mentally sighed and looked away, mumbling something too low for the other two to hear. Tsunade cupped her ear. "What did you say?" "We've met." Instantly, Tsunade knew that the answer was both true and false. True, because his defeated expression at her prodding was crystal clear, and false, because his blush said something else that he was not saying. "Oh no. You are not getting away like that. I knew you did something more. What is it?" Naruto looked very surprised that she somehow knew he was hiding something, and wondered if all the women were like this, knowing that something was being consciously hidden from them. He absently wondered if he would ever be able to hide something from Temari when they would get married and start living together. "We might have." The rest was said in an incomprehensible mumble. For all his age and years as a Hokage, Hiruzen was dumbfounded to see such a sudden change in one of his shinobi. Naruto just went from a completely confident ninja to a shy, embarrassed one. He wondered if Naruto really had something big to hide, or was he just embarrassed at being married away at such a young age. Tsunade's patience had just about reached its end. She walked up to Naruto and grabbed his collar, shaking him like a rag doll. "Will you man up and just say it? Or do you enjoy keeping people in the suspense? Tell us or I'll really punch you into the next week." "We have kissed, okay?" The answer caught both of them off guard. Tsunade, for one, was not expecting this at all. This was something that was so entirely out of the blue that she was shell-shocked. Her grip on his collar loosened, and she stepped back, mouth open and eyes wide, unable to form a word. To hear that Naruto, the boy that she thought was as oblivious as his father used to be, had had a short-term, but romantic relationship with a girl, the same girl who her sensei had now given Naruto away to, was too much. She simply couldn't make sense of anything right now. The coincidence was almost like an act of fate. Hiruzen, on the other hand, was no better off. He had never, in his wildest thoughts, imagined that Naruto apparently had been in a relationship with the Kazekage's daughter. He then realized that Naruto could only have met Temari when the Sand siblings came here for the Chunin exams. He had always thought that Naruto was a serious child, dedicated to becoming stronger so that he could protect what was precious to him. He would have never thought Naruto might actually put time aside for some romance such as this. However, learning that Naruto already liked the selected bride, a great deal of weight was pulled off from his shoulders. He almost sank into his chair in relief like a melting ice cream. Finally, Naruto looked suspiciously at the other two in the room. It was clear who was the one who actually came up with this idea, but was it really that hard to believe that he had been in a temporary soon-to-be permanent romantic relationship? But then again, it was from the point of view of a third person. Maybe the reaction was to be expected. Right now though, he needed to get out of here. Can I leave? The question managed to snap the other two into attention. Before they could reply, Naruto had already flashed back to his apartment. There was silence for a few moments, broken then by Tsunade's chuckles. Hiruzen raised an eyebrow at her, silently asking her why. Tsunade replied, "Who would have thought that the brat actually had a relationship with a girl? And you are marrying him off to the same girl?" Hiruzen nodded, too relaxed right to speak. He was just glad that Naruto already had a relationship with the girl, so this won't be too tough on him. XXXXXXX. Well, that was a surprise. Naruto was sitting on the head of his father, looking over the village in the night. This was his favorite place to come whenever he wanted to think in silence. Right now, he had a shit-eating grin on his face. Damn right, it was. I hate to say this, but it was almost like an act of fate. I guess we should just leave it at that. Neither you nor I are capable of truly knowing just how this happened. Naruto shrugged. True. However, this is surreal that I'm getting married at such a young age, when I should be focused on getting stronger. But I'm glad that it happened with Temari. We both are. Speaking of getting strong, you need to get back into training. I want you to master my first tail by the end of this week. You've had enough rest. You got it, Kurama. Although, I wonder how Temari will be reacting to this piece of news? I'm sure she's just as overwhelmed as you are, Naruto. Perhaps more so than you. I'm wondering how Gaara would react, though. Naruto raised his eyebrows, whistling. Damn, you're right. Perhaps I should be worried about both of their reactions. Her brother, though, he is a barrel of laughs. A loud snort echoed through his mind. You're right about that. When you really look at it, he really is just a boy in his sister's makeup, playing with dolls. This time, Naruto was the one who snorted. How do you know he wore Temari's makeup? Would any self-respecting male confess to having a makeup kit? Fair point. Naruto thought back to what he had read on the document, and automatically a grin curled up on his lips. The thought of marrying Temari, tasting those lips again, for the rest of his life. Hiruzen was just wrapping up his work in his office. Tsunade was to be announced as the Hokage tomorrow, so it had been a very busy day for him, not to mention giving Naruto the good news. He was about to shunshin to his clan compound when he heard it. It suspiciously sounded like a person he was used to seeing. A week passed after the good news, without anything interesting happening, except Tsunade officially becoming Hokage. Naruto had put his week off to good use to train and after that, started taking missions. In fact, he fully took advantage of the privileges that became available to him after his promotion to Jonin. He was allowed to take missions of higher rank, and after taking a bit of advice from Kakashi, who had experience in the young Jonin department, he started out with high C rank to mid B rank. So far, he had completed 5 missions, 1 each day, 2 high C rank, 2 mid B rank and 1 high B rank. The last one was actually supposed to be a mid B rank, guarding a wealthy wine merchant and his 2 friends in their journey from Konoha to the land of vegetables. Naruto was at first quite surprised that they made use of horse wagons. One was for the merchant and his friends, the other for their goods. The merchant was at first skeptical that there would only be one ninja to guard them, but Tsunade had convinced them that Naruto was more than qualified for this mission. Naruto sat on top of the second wagon in their journey. At halfway point, it seemed that this mission would be completed without any problem, and to Naruto's regret, any fight. However, as the saying goes, don't provoke the universe. It turned out that when they were about to enter Nano Kuni, they were ambushed by a ninja. More specifically, a missing nin. Omitsuishin was a high B-rank missing nin from Kirigakure. Apparently, he had been hired to take out the merchant by arrival, or at least, that's what he said in his monologue when he was standing in front of the wagon. Poor guy never even saw Naruto coming, for the blonde's flash step was fast enough to catch Kakashi off guard. This guy stood no chance at all. He had just finished his monologue and moved to attack when Slash! His head was cleanly cut off from his body by Naruto using a kunai coated with wind chakra. Naruto had been ready to dispose of his body when he had paused and took out his bingo book. He had smiled when he saw the missing nin's entry on a page for 120,000 ryo. Of course, his mission pay was relatively higher and had been bumped up because of Ishin, but extra cash hurt no one. The client had been incredibly relieved and pleased, with him and his friends repeatedly thanking Naruto for saving their lives. Naruto had told them about the change in mission parameters and the cost following it. Fortunately, they had offered no resistance against paying more. They wanted to repay him in any way they could, so Naruto just collected the extra money in payment. It had taken them a total of 38 hours to reach their destination. After getting their signature that the mission was complete and wishing them good luck in their endeavors, Naruto double-timed it back to the village, making just one stop at a bounty station to collect Ishin's bounty. Unfortunately, he could not use Hiraishin because his sensing capabilities were not good enough to cover countries just yet. On the bright side, he put his recent mastery of Kurama's fist tail to good use. After they had returned with Tsunade, Naruto used his week off to master Kurama's first tail. The blonde had, after a substantial amount of hard work, mastered the use of his body in the one-tailed mode. His already impressive strength, speed and reflexes were heightened greatly. It had taken him a mere 5 hours of journey to reach Konoha. After he had reported his success back to Tsunade and collected his money, he had went back to his house. His parents' house. That was another new development for him. After the day when he was told, he was called back into Tsunade's office, where she had advised him to move into his parents' house as soon as possible. After all, his apartment was hardly a place for him to live after his marriage. And knowing how Naruto tended to finish things rather quickly to avoid any backlog, she told him to move into the house the day after. At first, Naruto was a little puzzled because he really couldn't understand the reason he had to move his things so quickly. But Tsunade explained it to him that he had to have the house ready and furnished by the time Temari arrived. And by ready, she meant it was to be ready for Naruto and Temari to live in, not just him. Being the naive guy Naruto was, he didn't understand at what she was hinting. Naruto was a very simplistic guy who really only had what he needed and nothing more. Of course, then he was introduced to shopping, his nightmare for the next few days. Day of the moving. Turns out, news like the kind of these had a way of spreading around the village very fast. Naruto had reluctantly agreed to Tsunade's suggestion of moving into his parents' house the very next day. Just as he was leaving the office after their discussion, Tsunade casually told him that they needed to do some work after he was done moving. The glint in her eyes when she said that actually managed to scare him. He had the whole next week off, including 2 days extra of the week after, because of him doing back-to-back B-rank missions the whole week and not taking the required leave. Which meant, he had the whole week to get the house ready for Temari's arrival. The next day, at 10 in the morning, he started packing after he had lazed around a little. With the help of his shadow clones, he finished packing everything within an hour. All his ninja-related supplies like shuriken, kunai, fuinjutsu scrolls, ninja wire went into one large sealing scroll, while his household supplies went into another large sealing scroll. When he had packed up, he looked around the apartment, feeling a small sense of sadness within him. A part of him didn't want to leave the small residence. This was actually the first thing that had really belonged to him, gifted to him by the old man. To leave it like this, even if it meant going to live in his parents' house, felt sad. He would be sure to acquire a fair price for it when he sold it later. He slung the scrolls and walked out of the apartment, closing the door. He took out a folded piece of paper from his pocket and pressed it on the ground, right in front of the door, so that the seals faced the ground. Pushing a little bit of chakra into it, a glow lit up the entire corridor, lighting all the seals present on the walls. Seals that were carved by him as a security measure for those who came after him. The piece of paper had the key to the sealing array in the corridor, to disable all the seals at once safely. Once the lights had receded, indicating all the seals were now gone, he crumpled up the paper and burnt it with a blazing palm. He looked around the place one last time, before flashing away. He arrived in the living room instantly. He put down the scrolls when one thing suddenly hit him. He had absolutely no idea what to do next. He was unsure if he should unpack or not, because the house already was furnished and maintained for almost 15 years. He could unpack his shinobi supplies, but what of the household supplies? He went to the only person who was capable of helping him. But first, a little insurance. Tsunade looked at Naruto with mild amusement as he narrated his problem. She honestly found it a little cute and adorable that Naruto, who seemed to have a solution for every problem, would be unsure in the face of matters of preparing the house for his bride. Then again, a man definitely can't do a woman's job. So will you help me? Naruto posed his question, standing in front of Tsunade. He knew that Tsunade was the only woman who could help him. She was the only one he trusted as well, aside from Shizune. Tsunade smirked as she leaned back in her chair, hands folded at her stomach. I could, but the Hokage's services come with a price, you know. Naruto internally groaned, but was half expecting this. After all, Tsunade would be a fool to not take advantage of him asking for her help. He sighed and took out a storage scroll from his pouch and laid it on her table, unsealing it. Tsunade's eyes widened as her eyes laid themselves on 3 very expensive, exotic bottles of sake. Her eyes shot to him in question, to which he shrugged. Don't ask me, I found them in my basement. Interestingly, he learned that his mother was quite a fan of exotic sake. He had a whole stash of his mother's sake in the basement. These 3 were only a little part of the whole that was very delicately preserved. His mother had damn fine sealing skills if she was able to preserve the whole stash like she did. The seals on the stash were personally made by her for storage purpose. Tsunade picked up a bottle and turned it around, whistling at the label. Well, your mother had good taste, she commented, then paused. She narrowed her eyes at him. How do I know that these haven't gone bad? Naruto replied easily, my mother created seals specifically for preserving them for a long time. Tsunade knew just how good Kushina was with Fuinjutsu. If she was the one who created seals to preserve these precious babies, then she had no doubt these hadn't gone bad. She then had a devious thought, perhaps she could haggle for a bit more. Still, just 3 bottles for the service you are asking from me? Naruto narrowed his eyes, you very well know just how rare these are. In fact, I could have just said that I would owe you a favor, but that was too risky. I'm asking help for a bit of house decoration, mind you. Tsunade immediately raised her hands in surrender position. Just kidding, Naruto. I was just kidding. However, inside she was breathing a sigh of relief. Man, those eyes were unnerving. First things first, we need to get you access to your clan accounts, she said, standing up. We're going to the bank. What followed after was perhaps the most boring day in Naruto's short life. Tsunade had taken him to the bank, right after dumping the day's work on Shizune, and they had spent almost 4 hours going over statements, accounts etc. At the end of their work, both of them had been quite mentally exhausted, but had smiles on their faces. Turns out if you are an important person and being accompanied by the Hokage, your work gets over rather quickly. Naruto had finally been granted full access to his clan's accounts. And what accounts they were! The Namake's account was by no means small, having a total of 300 million ryo. Naruto had first been baffled, for he had no idea just how his father had managed to acquire so much money. Namake's had not been a clan before his father became the Hokage. The Uzumaki account, on the other hand, had simply left him with his mouth hanging open. The simply ridiculous amount of money had almost sent him into shock. The amount won't be mentioned, but it was enough that he could live another life without working, that too lavishly. Tsunade and Naruto were walking back to the Hokage Tower, the former with an exhausted smile on her face and the latter still gazing at the shiny, new account cards in his hands with awe and wonder. Tsunade looked at her fellow blonde and smirked, you still having trouble believing? Naruto nodded as he pocketed the cards. The Uzumaki clan I can believe, but I had, and still don't have, any idea just how was my father able to acquire so much money alone. Minato was an extremely clever and resourceful person, Naruto. Just leave it at that. The two walked in silence for a while, which was then broken by Naruto. He asked curiously, so, I thought that we were going to do something about redecorating my house. why did we go to the bank? To his surprise, Tsunade laughed heartily. Oh Naruto. I sometimes forget that you are still a child and can't see the bigger picture sometimes. That comment earned a scowl from him. Tsunade completely ignored the scowl and smirked. The real fun begins tomorrow. We'll start at 9 in the morning. The feeling of doom Naruto had been feeling earlier returned with a vengeance. Next day of the moving. Naruto had been sparring with 5 of his clones, completely on the defensive, in the massive ground behind his house. You might think that why would Naruto need to be on defensive against his own clones, but you would be wrong. Naruto was trying to avoid all their attacks, blindfolded. And he was only partially succeeding. He was trying to use everything but his eyesight to avoid the attacks. He was trying to hone his instincts to the highest level, trying to increase the precision of his danger sense. He avoided a roundhouse kick from a clone by ducking underneath, moving his left hand in a smooth motion to redirect the punch to his chin another way. He would have continued, but the seals on the outer gate informed him that someone was standing outside his house. He and his clones paused their fighting, dispelling themselves. He walked over to his towel and water, taking the bottle with him as he walked and wiping the sweat. He arrived at the gate and opened it, frowning in confusion when he saw Tsunade standing there. With Sakura, Ino, and Tenten. He frowned in concern when he saw an expression of mirth on Sakura's face, followed by the absolutely savage smirk on Ino's and a friendly smile on Tenten's face. Have a nice morning, brat? Naruto immediately turned an annoyed face towards the busty Kage. Yeah, it was going so fruitful, he said with light sarcasm. Tsunade, being a medic, immediately noticed the bruises forming on his arms. She curiously asked, "What were you doing?" Naruto vaguely answered. Training. She stepped forward, "At least let me heal those bruises." Her hands lit up with green chakra, accelerating already fast healing process, thanks to Kurama. Sakura stepped forward, and her tone mimicked her expression of betrayal. So, Naruto, I heard something very interesting from Tsunade-sama. Naruto's sarcastic mutter of "did you now?" went unheard by the pink-haired girl. Ino was the next to pitch in. Yeah, that you were going to get married to the Princess of the Sand. Hearing Ino describe Temari like that made Naruto actually pause and think. Now that he thought about it, Temari was royalty, being the daughter of the Kazekage. This gave him the perfect comeback for Ino's comment. Well, a prince usually only marries a princess. That earned him a half-hearted swat on the head by Tsunade, and giggles from Sakura and Tenten. Ino tried to scowl as well, but even she chuckled in the end. She should have expected this, with Naruto being the son of the Yondaime, she mused. Naruto whispered to Tsunade so only she could hear. Not that I mind you healing me, why are you doing it? It usually vanishes in under 20 minutes. Tsunade muttered back, still concentrating on the fading bruises. I'm not doing it out of kindness, Gaki. I have need of you this day. She looked up with a slight grin. We are going to abuse you the whole day. She mentally laughed at Naruto's alarmed expression before stepping back. You know, she began, the village would know of your marriage anyway, so I decided that it best be on my terms. Naruto pointed an accusing finger at her. You told Ino, didn't you? The smirk of the female blondes gave him the answer. He shook his head. Anyway, why have you called them here? I thought you were the one going to help me? Tsunade put an arm around his shoulders and started leading him back into the house, with the genin following behind her. I did say that, but the work we are going to do today cannot be done by me alone, which is why I brought some help. Naruto deadpanned at her. Any particular reason your help consists of only girls? Tsunade nodded seriously, causing Naruto to double take. This seemed like a serious matter. We are going to completely refurbish this house of yours. Don't worry, she assured the mildly panicking blonde, we won't change the house completely. Just put some new things here and there, add a woman's touch that's very important, among other things. Oh, and leave something for Temari to add if she wants to. Naruto opened the door to the house, allowing the others to walk inside. he and Tsunade walked ahead of others, who were marveling at the inside of the house. Ino's eyes fell on the portrait of Naruto's parents and she gasped in awe. "Naruto, is that your mother?" Naruto turned around and saw the three genin looking at the portrait of his parents. He smiled slightly in pride. "Yeah. Isn't she beautiful?" Sakura was the one who replied this time, gushing over. "She's gorgeous." Tsunade lightly shoved Naruto upstairs. "Get dressed fast. We have work to do today." As Naruto made his way upstairs, Tsunade walked and took a seat at the sofa. The three genin followed her example and sat down as well, with Tenten leaning forward in interest. "You. Tsunade-sama, did you know about Naruto's parents?" To the genin's surprise, the medic Nin snorted. "It surprises me how anyone didn't figure it out. I mean, he literally looks just like his father." She waved her hand, gesturing to the portrait. And it was true, as they had found out on the day of the finals. Naruto and his father could be clones, if Naruto was a little more grown up in height. Before they could think more on this, Naruto came downstairs, in his Jonin uniform. "Let's get this over with, shall we?" However, his confidence dimmed after looking at the glint in their eyes. Oh, what torture it was! 7 hours later, Naruto was looking around the inside of his house with a tiredness he had never felt before. He didn't have any energy left to do anything. As he tiredly collapsed on the sofa to get some of his energy to head to the bedroom and fall onto his bed, he recounted what he went through the day. Tsunade and the girls had taken full advantage of his ability to mass-produce shadow clones. Tsunade had taken him to get the latest kitchen accessories, while his clones had went with Ino, Sakura, and Tenten to get new interior designs for the house. Tsunade also sent a clone of her own with them, just to make sure that whatever the girls selected didn't make the house too girly for Naruto's tastes. Naruto had protested that his house already had kitchen accessories, but Tsunade insisted he take it, if only as a wedding present from her. He was reluctant to buy it, but he did. To his enormous shock and surprise, his account, the Uzumaki account, barely had a dent in it after the purchases they had made, and not just for the kitchen. Tsunade had only laughed and said that Kushina didn't do anything in small amounts. They had returned home to find the three girls, with a group of men working extensively on the interior design of the house. After seeing Naruto, he was bewildered to see his own clones giving him looks of pain, followed by pity and then, to the extreme annoyance of Naruto, dispelling. Present. Boy, that day was a roller coaster for Naruto, with merciless teasing from Kurama. The extensive work that had been going on in his house had also been charged to his Uzumaki account. Seeing the ridiculous amount of money it contained, Naruto had little to no problem in using it to give his house a new look. He had been quite worried that Tsunade had given Ino and Sakura free rein over the designing of the house. However, Tsunade had assured him that she had picked Tenten just for the purpose so that Ino wouldn't completely make it look like that only a woman lived there. And judging from the arguments from Tenten and Ino he had heard, with Sakura acting as mediator, Naruto knew that Tsunade had hit the nail on the head when it came to Ino. He had a freak out when he saw what plans Ino had for the house and then almost exploded when Tsunade claimed him down and told him that she would take over it from Ino, much to the girl's complaints, which were silenced by a stern look from the Hokage. Naruto watched as over the course of the next week, Tsunade completely transformed the house into something that was lavish and modern, but not too much that it lost the homely feeling that had been there before. Tsunade also made sure that Naruto added his own touches to the house, and left space for Temari, if she wanted to add something of her own. All in all, the house was ready well in time. All that was left was for Temari to come. Naruto finally snapped from the flashback and saw that he had arrived at his home. He flashed directly into his house, eager to do something to relax. He quickly took a shower and freshened up, wearing a t-shirt and a lower. He entered his father's study and sat down in the chair behind the beautiful, ornate desk. He traced his hand almost in remembrance, as if he could almost picture his father sitting on this desk, going over the ideas for Fuinjutsu. He leaned back, folding his hands behind his head and looking up at the ceiling, trying to decide on what to do. His father's study, which was his study now, had remained mostly untouched. Only the door that led into the room had been repainted. Otherwise, Naruto had strictly kept everyone from entering the room. He had redesigned the ceiling array completely before a war named Ino was dropped on his home. The password was only one, consisting of 3 kanji characters. But he had chosen 6 that looked almost alike, with minor differences in strokes. One time he had caught Ino attempting to open the study discreetly. She had thought she was alone, but apparently not. He had stopped her before she killed herself painfully, and very sternly reminded her to respect others' privacy, and keep away from the room. She had looked appropriately guilty, and promised not to investigate the door anymore. He absently grabbed a paper and a brush, dipping it in an ink pot and doodling some ideas on it. He had been told by Tsunade that Temari would be arriving tomorrow, so he was understandably tense. A few weeks ago, they were on the opposite sides of a war. Now, they were about to get married. Things were going to be a bit awkward, and he was not looking forward to it. He stood up, putting the brush away and crumpling the paper, burning it to ashes with a small fire. He was about to leave when something caught his eye on the shelf. More like, it was a book. A book he had never touched, for a reason he couldn't fathom. He took it off the shelf, eyebrows furrowing in confusion when he sensed a genjutsu placed on it. With a quick pulse of chakra, he shattered it. However, instead of immediately dispelling, like fog clearing away, it shattered like a glass, with chips of chakra diffusing into the air. Naruto watched with a small amount of awe. Genjutsu weren't meant to shatter like this. And why did this chakra feel so warm, so much like his own? He shook his head, making a quick note to investigate that later. He opened the book, reading the title. Enhancements with Ceiling? Naruto muttered, before flipping the pages and raising eyebrows with incredulousness at seeing countless mathematical calculations, scientific diagrams of the body, with numerous ceiling equations. He whispered to himself, "What the hell is this?" XXXXXXX. The next day found Naruto and Tsunade standing at the west gates of the village. Hiruzen was standing next to them as well. Naruto had to hand it to him, he was the oldest living Kage alive who was now enjoying retirement. Hiruzen said that he was now more of a call-on advisor to Tsunade, if she ever needed help dealing with more difficult matters. "We've been standing here for almost 20 minutes, Hokage-sama," Naruto said in boredom. "Are you sure we aren't early?" Tsunade twitched beside him. Even she was starting to get a bit impatient. She was never the one for tardiness. Maybe they ran into an obstacle on the way. Hiruzen laughed at seeing the interaction between both the blondes. It was quite entertaining. "Anyways, I have something I need to talk to you and Ero-sennin about, Bachan." The serious tone in his voice caused Tsunade to raise an eyebrow in surprise. What could be so serious that he needed her and Jiraiya's opinion on? Even Hiruzen was curious, but Naruto gave him an apologetic look. "Sorry Gigi, but I can't tell you, because I need their professional opinions as a medical specialist and seal master." Hiruzen nodded in realization. That would explain him being left out. The three stood standing for 10 more minutes when Naruto announced, "They're coming." Although for some reason, they are moving painfully slow. Tsunade looked at him in confusion. "How the hell do you know?" Naruto just gave her a look as if it was painfully obvious. "I'm a censor." "Didn't Ero-sennin tell you?" Tsunade grit her teeth. "I'm really gonna drill the pervert on the things he left out when telling me about you. Anyway, be very careful on how you speak with the Suna shinobi. You need to make a good first impression." Naruto smirked as he stared at the road ahead. "I think I already made a first impression. Not sure if good or not." On the other end, the entourage from Sand was relieved as a whole when the gates of Konoha came into their view. As tradition said, the bride had to be escorted in a palanquin. Temari was grumbling about her legs being cramped up from sitting for too long. She was not a delicate princess who needed to be pampered. She was a goddamn chunin of her village. Her thoughts took a melancholic turn as she looked at her reflection in one of the inside mirrors. From tomorrow, she was no longer going to be a shinobi of Suna, but rather of Konoha. She had been proud of wearing her village's headband, but no more. She would have to wear another village's shinobi. Proud? That's yet to be seen. Temari. The call startled her out of her thoughts. She turned her head to see Gaara poking his head inside, an unusual frown on his face. She sadly smiled at that she was still getting used to Gaara showing concern for her. What is it, Gaara? Are you all right? The question was so out coming from him, and yet Temari found it adorably cute. She smiled slightly as she held her brother's hand. He did not flinch. I will be, Gaara. Don't worry. Gaara looked extremely unsure of what to say next. For someone who had minimum social contact, that was to be expected. However, his next words were so sure that it caught Temari off guard. Naruto will take good care of you, Temari. He is the only one I trust to protect you. It still astounded Temari and Kankuro just how high Gaara held Naruto. Then again, Naruto had single-handedly turned Gaara's life around, so it was understandable, but putting so much trust in one person was simply mind-blowing. Thank you, Gaara. Wow. The quiet exclamation from Kankuro caught Temari's attention as she frowned. What is it, Kankuro? Both the former and current Hokage are here to greet us, along with your fiancé. The entourage reached the gates finally. Temari got out of the palanquin and came face to face with a very busty, blonde woman, alongside the god of shinobi and her fiancé. Her heart skipped a beat on seeing him give a small smile in her direction. But she steeled herself time for talking with him would come later. She bowed to the woman. Hokage-sama, it is an honor to meet you, as well as Sandaime-sama. Tsunade was formal in her reply as well. It is a pleasure to formally meet you. I am Senju Tsunade, Godame Hokage of Kanahagakure no Sato. Naruto eyed Temari appreciatively. She had changed her outfit to a long-sleeved purple blouse under a gray top, a dark blue skirt that reached her mid-thigh, showing off her legs, and a longer slash than the previous one. She carried her fan the same way as before as well, tucking it into her bow. Before Naruto could greet Temari, all talking stopped suddenly when Gaara stepped forward, walking so was standing directly in front of Naruto. Naruto faced the redhead with a genuine smile, waiting for him to say whatever he wanted to say. However, it became clear to Naruto when the silence stretched into awkwardness that Gaara was still learning on how to interpret social cues. So Naruto initiated the conversation. How have you been, Gaara? I have been well, Uzumaki Naruto. However, I have a request to make of you. Naruto didn't even need to read minds to know what request Gaara needed to make. He put his hand on the redhead's shoulders, ignoring the gasps from some of the Suna shinobi. I promise that I will protect Temari with my life, Gaara. This is the promise of a lifetime. That seemed to ease some tension from Gaara's shoulders. His next words were heartful. Thank you, Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto patted Gaara's shoulder once. Friends call each other by first names, Gaara. Just Naruto will suffice. Everyone was watching the interaction with different thoughts. The shinobi from Suna, except for Baki, seemed amazed that Naruto had talked to Gaara without showing an ounce of fear, and more, considered him a dear friend. Tsunade and Hiruzen were smiling, proud of Naruto's actions. They knew how tough a Jinchuriki's life was, Gaara's more than Naruto's, but it was very mature of him to actively break the ice with Gaara when no one wanted to. Temari was giving a thankful smile to her would-be husband, with Kankuro's being more hidden. However, the puppet fighter didn't know why he automatically straightened up when Naruto glanced at him. He gulped when he saw the blonde approaching in his direction with a smirk on his face. He did not see Temari's amused expression when Naruto stood in front of him, staring down at him. Naruto was almost 5 feet 5 inches, while Kankuro was slow in the growing department and as such, stood at 4 feet 11 inches, much to his shame. So Naruto practically towered over him. Kankuro could feel sweat forming on his brow, but refused to break eye contact with the taller shinobi. Naruto then leaned forward so that his mouth was next to Kankuro's ears. You better do something about your makeup. It easily gives away your nervous sweat. Kankuro's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He didn't expect this of all things to come out of his soon-to-be brother-in-law. He didn't even know what to say, but Naruto had already moved on. Naruto stood in front of Temari, fighting the impulse to hug her right there and then. It would look very out of place, not to mention suspicious to those who didn't know of their earlier interactions. Instead, he greeted her warmly, "Welcome to Konoha, Temari." Temari smiled and greeted back. "I accept your welcoming, Naruto-san." Apparently, she was more aware of the protocols and way of conversations that were to be followed in this context. That was to be expected of the eldest daughter of the Kazekage though. It was then Tsunade stepped back into the conversation. "Now that the greetings are over, please follow me. I will make your arrangements of staying in our village." However, Naruto interjected. "Hokage-sama, if it's not too much trouble, I can take Temari and her siblings with me to my home. They can stay with me. I have more than enough room." Tsunade gave it a moment of thought and then agreed. It would give Naruto and Temari time to talk out whatever issues they have, as well as catch up. Also, it would prove a good bonding time between Naruto and Temari's brothers. "Alright, you can take them with you. But report to me early tomorrow for Temari's initiation." Naruto beamed in her direction and put each of his hands around Gaara and Temari, pulling them into his sides. He turned to face her and gave a charming smile, "By your leave, Hokage-sama." He then flashed out of there, leaving a blinking and confused Kankuro in front of an equally confused Tsunade. A few moments later, Naruto flashed back, grabbed Kankuro by his shoulder and flashed away again. All the people left there blinked at the unusual happenings, not knowing what sense to make out of it. Tsunade snapped out of her confusion when Hiruzen chuckled beside her at Naruto's antics. She turned to the rest of Suna Shinobi, "The rest of you, follow me. I will show you your staying arrangements." XXXXXXX. Naruto appeared with Gaara and Temari right outside the gates that led into his home. Both of them blinked at the sudden travel, after which their minds caught up, followed by their bodies. Temari immediately turned and glared at a smirking Naruto, while Gaara deadpanned at him. A warning would have been nice, you know, she almost growled at him. Naruto sheepishly rubbed the back of his head and chuckled. It was the first time someone ever complained about instantaneous travel. "Don't ever do that again," Gaara said in his deadpan. Naruto rose an eyebrow in return. "You mean to say you don't like traveling from one place to another in an instant?" The narrowing of eyes was the only answer that Gaara gave, but Naruto refrained from smirking in his silent victory at the argument. It was then Temari spoke up. "Wait, where's Kankuro?" Naruto's eyes widened for a second, before he disappeared in a flash, returning instantly with the aforementioned person. The puppet fighter turned and indignantly pointed a finger at Naruto. "You forgot about me." Naruto shrugged, "My bad." He then walked up to the gates and pressed his hand to let the seals recognize his chakra. The seals glowed and the gate opened up, giving everyone a view of the house inside. Gaara was impassive as ever, but Kankuro was gaping in wonder at the house. Temari also gazed in awe at the residence, but hers was less than her idiotic brother. She had known that with Naruto being the head to two clans, wealth was never a problem for him. Naruto smirked at their reactions and gestured with his hands. "Shall we head inside?" They all went inside the gates, and this time Temari couldn't conceal a gasp. The compound was even more beautiful, with a small square pond in front of the house. The house in question was quite big, easily big enough to be called a mansion. And the garden, with its healthy grass and flowers, seemed to be well cared for. Naruto led them all inside, further surprising Temari and Kankuro. Gaara maintained his impassive look, but even he admitted to be impressed on the inside. The living room was very spacious and while looked very lavish, it still gave off a homey feeling. The kitchen also looked newly furbished, and was connected to the living room. Naruto walked into the center of the living room, right in front of the sofas and living room and clapped twice for attention. "Alright, listen up." The three siblings turned to him, frowning in confusion. "First order of business, I'm telling you where you're gonna sleep." He turned to Temari, who looked a bit anxious. His look softened and he said, "Temari, while we may know each other," he ignored Gaara's raised eyebrow and Kankuro's sputters, "I doubt you want us to sleep together. So we are going to be sleeping in separate rooms." Kankuro interrupted him. "Wait, what about you and my sister Dash?" "So here are the facts," Naruto continued, as if the guy hadn't even spoken. "There are a total of 3 bedrooms upstairs. The master bedroom, which is mine, is at the end of the corridor. There are 2 guest bedrooms, one of which will be Temari's." He turned to Gaara. "You two either could bunk together or Dash. Kankuro can have it." "I don't sleep," Gaara stated. Naruto frowned, but shrugged. "Have it your way then. Guess you are lucky, doll boy, you get to sleep in a bed instead of the couch." Kankuro sputtered again as Naruto kept on talking. He turned to Gaara and said, "Remind me to fix your seal one of these days." After everyone had been introduced to their rooms, Naruto called them down again and said, "Alright, now that the accommodations have been set, here's the thing. Either you can train in the grounds behind the house, or you can roam around Konoha with my clone as a guide to show you the hotspots." Kankuro asked accusingly. "Why a clone?" Naruto turned his face towards him with a raised eyebrow. "I hope you don't mind, but I'd like to spend the day with my fiancée. That is, if she is willing," he asked her, to which she gave a small nod and walked up to him, poking his chest. "We need to have a talk." "We don't mind, Naruto. We will take your clone as a guide," Gaara said before Kankuro really started to grill Naruto. The talk his sister wanted to have sounded important. Just as he finished speaking, a clone popped up beside Naruto. "Have fun, you two." With that, Naruto grabbed Temari and disappeared. XXXXXXX. Naruto and Temari spent the rest of the day just roaming around, talking about just general things, getting to know each other better, or they went to a restaurant and had lunch, or trained. The day passed very quickly for both of them, and soon they found themselves sitting on the head of Naruto's father, overlooking the village. Naruto was leaning against a spike of hair, with Temari leaning into his right side, head rested on shoulder, with Naruto's arm wrapped around her shoulder. She had her fan rested against another spike nearby. Both of them were enjoying the peace and quiet. "I could get used to this," Temari murmured, shifting so she was closer than before. Naruto was more than happy to let her. "Yeah, me too." Silence reigned for a short while again, which was then broken by Naruto. "Temari, do you think this could work?" Temari lifted her head from Naruto's shoulder to look him in the eyes. She knew exactly what he was talking about, whether this marriage could work or not. She sighed. Naruto always seemed to go straight to the point, without beating around the bush. Not that she had a problem with that. "To be honest, even I had this question on my mind ever since I was told about this," she told him, watching him nod in return. She began to blush as she spoke. "I know that I liked you, spending time in your company. I had developed these feelings for you that I had never felt before, towards anyone. I like you, but I am unsure whether these feelings are enough to." She couldn't exactly find the words to express how she truly felt. Naruto just nodded. "It's okay. I understand." Something like that is difficult to put into words. "How about we talk this another way?" Temari turned to him with a quizzical look. "What do you mean?" Naruto tilted his head till he was directly facing Temari. She was very close to him. The physical contact they had at the moment would have made him blush any time, but the conversation was serious. "You know, when I found out that we were supposed to be enemies, I just couldn't come to terms with that fact. My feelings were so strong for you that I almost couldn't make my mind up on what would I do if I were to face you in the war." Temari didn't say anything, just nodding him to continue. But her eyes were a bit blurrier than before. Naruto forced any hesitance back. He needed to get this out of his system. "My feelings for you and duty to the village were in conflict. If I chose you, then my village would kill me. The village that was entrusted to me by my parents. Abandoning it meant spitting on what they did to protect me." A single tear flowed from Temari's right eye. What do you mean, entrusted to you?
Naruto's reply was monotonous.
I'm the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi.
That reply almost made Temari choke on her own spit.
Naruto was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi? How and when the hell did that happen?
Then she remembered the conversations between her and Naruto before the invasion. Naruto had told her that the village had very few people that actually cared about him. No wonder Gaara held Naruto in such high regard, they could almost be brothers in suffering. Then she remembered something. The Yondaime had seemingly killed the Kyuubi years ago. But masses of chakra can't be killed, and Naruto just revealed that the Kyuubi was living inside him, which meant...
Oh Kami, she breathed out. This was too much news to be dealt with at one time. To think the Yondaime sealed the Kyuubi inside his own son? To protect the village, he sacrificed his own family?
Tears were freely flowing out by now. Naruto was sugarcoating it when he said that he had been entrusted with the village.
The Yondaime Hokage had sealed the fate of his own son by making him the Kyuubi's jailer. It was frightening how many similarities were popping up between Gaara and Naruto.
Their father had sealed Shikaku into Gaara, trying to make him into a weapon. Naruto's father had done the same, except he had done so with a hope that Naruto would use the power to protect the village.
Why?
The word was whispered, because Temari was openly crying by now. A look full of concern came across Naruto's face as he pulled Temari into his lap. He gently grabbed her face with his hands and brushed off her tears with his thumbs, speaking in a slightly pleading tone.
Please don't cry, Haim. I don't like it when you cry. Temari held Naruto's hands with her own.
What kind of father would condemn his own son to a life such as that?
Naruto smiled slightly and put his forehead against hers.
The kind that loved his village with all his heart. The kind whose morals refused to let him use someone else's child if he couldn't use his own. He gave a soft kiss to Temari on her lips, feeling the unique taste that was so her. The kind that trusted his son above everyone else. Temari gave a watery smile and shook her head.
You are something else, Naruto.
Naruto chuckled and continued.
Anyways, we got off topic.
As I was saying, if I chose you, then the village would kill me. If I chose you, I would never have been able to live with myself with the knowledge that Konoha could, or worse, did, kill you, and there was something I could have done something about it and I didn't. Temari's face was unreadable, and just as Naruto was starting to fear that he had spoken something wrong, she asked, but you still chose me over the village.
Why?
Naruto frowned as he tried to find a way to phase his answer. I felt this sort of connection, for the lack of a better word, between us.
We just seemed to sort of click. I felt like I won't ever be able to act like when I was with you with anyone else.
Temari looked at him, trying to find something he didn't know, and then slowly hugged him. It was a warm hug, and she was sitting sideways in his lap, so not exactly perfect, but it still made him smile. Perhaps love does not need words to express itself, Temari murmured. She pulled back from the hug and stared into Naruto's confused eyes.
Because love is a language in itself.
It was at this moment that both of them knew that they cared for each other on a level that went deeper than what they thought. It was love, but neither of them were sure enough to admit it. Naruto nodded with a smile. We can make this work.
Temari agreed wholeheartedly with a smile. We can make this work. Naruto had a thought and asked her, so, what do we do now? Dinner time is still half an hour away. Temari thought for a moment and asked, will we be eating out? Naruto shook his head.
I was thinking I would treat you all to some homemade food.
Actually, that gives me an idea.
He formed a half-ram seal and 5 clones popped up. He turned towards one clone, go to Gaara and Kankuro, tell them to meet me at the house in exactly 1 hour.
The clone nodded and vanished in a blue flash.
Turning to the other 4, he gave his orders, you 4 start preparing the dinner at home.
The 4 clones nodded and vanished in a similar manner as the one before.
Temari hummed, impressed.
Those shadow clones seem to be damn useful.
Naruto smirked, trust me, they make for great company as well. Both of them chuckled at the thought of talking to yourself when getting bored.
As their chuckles faded, Naruto asked, "So, what do we do now?"
Temari thought and smirked as she thought of the perfect way to spend. She smiled coyly as she leaned forward and planted kisses on Naruto's neck, causing his breath to hitch.
"I can think of something."
Naruto was all too happy to indulge her.
Warning, small lime scene. Naruto turned Temari so he could kiss her lips.
Unlike last time, the two immediately engaged in a battle of their tongues without wasting any time. Temari wrapped her arms around his neck to pull herself closer, while he wrapped his arms around her waist to feel her against his body. "Kami, I have missed this," was the sole thought running through both of their minds. The two continued to tongue wrestle for some time, after which Naruto broke off the lip lock, only to start kissing her neck, all the while running his hands on Temari's sides and back. Temari released a gasp of pleasure and tilted her head to give him more access. She released a quiet moan when he began to suck on her pulse. "You've gotten better at this," she managed to breath out. "I aim to please," he returned easily. She felt Naruto smile at her compliment as he switched sides. Not only that, since Temari was sitting so she was facing Naruto's left side, his left hand made its way down from her waist, past her hips and onto her legs. Temari's breath hitched again as Naruto began running his hand across the exposed skin of her legs. "You know, I just love your new wardrobe change," he said in a husky voice. "Brings out your legs way better than the last one." "Glad to know it was worth it," she said in the same tone of voice. Wow, the hormones really were getting out here. Internally, she was growling, only because the same effect won't come in the husky voice. She felt that Naruto had switched from submissive to dominating way too quickly. Well, time to turn the tables. She grabbed his face with her hands and once again engaged him in a battle of tongues. Only this time, she came out as the victor as she explored every inch of his mouth with her tongue. What she didn't know was that Naruto was only too happy to let her take control like that. It was then he found out a new thing about himself: he loved girls who had a dominating side to them. Of course, he preferred to be in control during this type of activity. He loved the way how Temari aggressively fought him for control. It really turned him on. Such as now. Temari felt something poking her right inner thigh. Her brain immediately told her what was poking, and she felt herself smirking against Naruto's lips. She broke off the kiss and smirked at him. Naruto was surprised when Temari decided to break the lip lock with him. But when he looked at her face, he had to call on almost all of his willpower to not immediately re-engage their lip lock. Her entire face was flushed, lips a little swollen from their tongue dueling, and that smirk was damn sexy. When she spoke, her voice had a sultry tone that he had never heard from her, but he really liked it. "Is that your kunai, or are you just happy to see me?" With a start, Naruto realized that his erection was poking Temari in her thigh through his clothes. Naruto always knew he was blessed, but times like he wished he had worn thicker clothing. But he refused to be embarrassed. It was his reputation at stake here. Apparently, Naruto had been silent for longer than Temari liked. But she didn't get annoyed. Quite the opposite, really. She made a rather bold move, adjusting herself on his lap, her leg moving against his kunai in the process. She felt her ego swell a little at the groan that Naruto released. "Like that, didn't you?" Naruto stared at her with half-lidded eyes. "You are evil." He was not about to let this go without a comeback. He used his right hand to pull her face closer, quickly latching onto her earlobe. The gasp she released was well worth, but he wasn't done yet. His left hand roamed her left inner thigh, stopping and lightly squeezing the bare skin right below her panties. He didn't allow her subsequent moan to distract him, however. His right hand brushed across her left breast, his thumb ghosting across the now erect nipple. Her moan was much more audible this time, and Naruto allowed himself a smirk as he sucked on the earlobe. He pulled back to see Temari's face, and felt his pride swell. Temari's chest was heaving, and it was a sight that further aroused him, but he kept himself in check for the moment. Half-lidded eyes that contained frustration, mixed with pleasure and pleading? "Guess I did something right," he said, as smiled satisfactorily. Temari was heaving as she glared at him. What Naruto did to her in the past few seconds was almost unbelievable, and felt really good. She never knew a foreign touch was capable of causing such pleasure. She had never been aroused on such a level as before.
Line scene over.
You are a tease, she said as she leant against him. Naruto just chuckled and wrapped his arms around her. Though they had been a bit more daring than the last time, both decided that this was a good boundary for now. Learn from the master, he sassed back. Both were completely aroused right now, but before they could decide on a further course of action, Naruto's clone flashed before them, causing Temari to yelp and clutch Naruto tighter.
Naruto only snorted and said, "If you are going to live with me, you better get used to that." But Temari recovered quickly and poked him in the chest. "Oh, no way, Namikaze. Trust me, we are going to lay some ground rules concerning your flashing."
Naruto stared at her for a moment, then relented.
"Fair enough." Turning to the clone, he asked, "Is dinner ready?"
The clone smirked and nodded, causing Naruto to whistle.
"Damn, time sure does pass fast when you're having fun." Temari got up so Naruto could get up. "Get Gaara and Kankuro to the dining table. We'll follow."
The clone nodded and flashed away.
Naruto turned to Temari, who was watching him with a knowing smirk. "What?" "That's a very impressive size for someone your age," she commented while gesturing below. Naruto quirked an eyebrow before looking down, instantly flushing in embarrassment. His package was clearly visible through the lower he was wearing, proudly standing tall. To save some of his dignity, he asked in return. "And you would know how?"
Temari shrugged. They teach stuff like that to the Kunoichi and Suna for the missions that are special.
Naruto nodded, "Fair enough.
Guess I'll have to settle for a cold shower, then." He grabbed Temari and disappeared in a blue flash.
XXXXXXX.
Kumobikir no Sato was a village that lived up to its name. The village hidden in clouds was at such high altitude that it literally was hidden among the clouds.
This village was the shinobi village of Kaminari no Kuni, the land of lightning.
Its leader was called the Raikage, literally meaning the lightning shadow. The current Raikage was simply known as A, and right now, he was staring at the destroyed furniture in his office, thinking about the latest news his spy had delivered.
Uzumaki Naruto was the one and only son of Namikaze Minato. At first, A's interest was aroused by the fact alone that an Uzumaki had survived and was living in Konoha right now.
Uzushiovicure no Sato had been completely destroyed in the Second Great War, with the combined efforts of Kumo and IWA. Of course, a few scant survivors might have managed to escape, but it's not as if they can do anything. Then came the Third War, in which Kumo had lost badly, but not as badly as IWA did. Konoha no Kiroi Senko, Namikaze Minato, had single-handedly secured Konoha's victory in the war. The man had earned the entire shinobi world sphere, and grudging respect of a few. In fact, Minato came to be so feared that while the man's short reign as the Yondaime Hokage, no village even dared to so much as look at Konoha with the intent of fighting it. The world was aware of what happened to Iwa's forces, and no one wanted the wrath of the Yellow Flash to be directed at them. But 13 years ago, the legendary Flash had died fighting to save his village from the Kyuubi. Contrary to what many people in his village felt, I held great respect for Minato. He was the only one to completely outspeed and blindside him in their single fight against each other in the war. A respected strength, and Minato had proven himself stronger, and way faster than him. I considered Minato his rival, and was understandable upset when the only person who could give him a run for his speed left the world. But looking at the situation from a political angle, it meant that Konoha no longer had the might of the Yellow Flash in their hands. And IWA had rejoiced at the death of that man. But now he was hearing this. A blonde boy, no older than 13, with azure blue eyes named Uzumaki Naruto. A genin of Konoha who had been participating in the Chunin exams as a student of Hatake Kakashi, the copy ninja. He was a non-entity to his spy until the moment it was announced that Uzumaki Naruto was the son of the Yondaime Hokage. And he was powerful, more than most of the Jonin, his spy was saying. This Naruto had trumped a Hyuga in taijutsu like it was nothing, and had used Fuinjutsu and Hiraishin in great conjunction to take out Tsuna's Jinchuriki. All in all, Uzumaki Naruto spelled trouble for the nations. The boy was clearly powerful, and coupled with the Hiraishin could match some of the world's greatest shinobi. If he was allowed to get even more powerful, the balance of power among the nations could dangerously tip in Konoha's favor. But even knowing this, he could not afford to go to war with Konoha, even if his military was much larger than the other villages.
Much as he hated to admit, if Kumo had quantity, then Konoha had quality.
He sat down in his chair and thought. Right now, the news was that Tsuna had decided to regain its alliance with the Leaf by using the old tradition of an arranged marriage.
Sabako no Temari, the daughter of the Yanden Kazekage, had been set to marry Uzumaki Naruto. No doubt, not only would the marriage cement their alliance, but the offspring of the two would no doubt be powerful. But he had to take into account the Leaf as well. For all its powerful shinobi, the Leaf was not a provocative village. They never made the first move in any of the great wars. For now, he would keep the boy in check. It was all he could do right now. XXXXXXX. Iwagakure was a village that harbored feelings of great hate towards the Hidden Leaf. Ever since the Third Great War ended, the Tsuchikage, Anoki, resented the Leaf. Anoki was an old, but powerful shinobi. The only one in the world with Jin Tun, the dust release. Anoki relied on the dust release far more than he cared to admit. He was a shinobi who had seen all the three great wars, and had lived through them. But of the three, the third war was the one he hated the most because of the crushing, humiliating defeat they suffered at the hands of just one man from Konoha, Namikaze Minato. The blow to Iwa's pride, along with its forces, was so large that IWA had yet to fully recover from it. Anoki hated the man with all his being at first, but after 2 years of heavy dwelling, he found that Namikaze Minato had done what anyone would have done in his place. Namikaze Minato had protected his home.
It was war, and losses were dealt to both the sides. While IWA suffered the heaviest, all the villages were fighting to survive. Konoha just happened to have a card that was better than theirs. Holding on to grudges like that did no one good. Namikaze Minato deserved his rest after what he did to protect his village. So Anoki did the wise thing. He let his irrational hatred go. Of course, that could not be said for the whole village. Countless had lost their families due to the slaughter Namikaze had brought upon them. His own granddaughter was one such example. Kuratsuchi lost her mother in the war, and had blamed it all on Namikaze. Anoki honestly was worried for her mental health. Blaming a man who was just doing his job was hardly fair, after all. And now there was this news. His spy had delivered the news of utmost importance. Apparently, the Yellow Flash had a child, whose name was Uzumaki Naruto. At first, Anoki couldn't quite believe the message. When he did, he had just collapsed onto his chair in disbelief. He had seen the power of Namikaze Minato, and he was not interested in seeing that again. At first, he would have happily given the order to assassinate the boy and his recently known fiancée, to make sure that every trace of Namikaze Minato was wiped out from the face of the world. But now, he was content to just keep his distance. He knew that Namikaze lived by a code: as long as you kept your distance and didn't harm his close ones, he was content to leave you alone as well. I look forward to see what you become, Namikaze Naruto. Unfortunately, he forgot to safely put the document.